All right. It's Friday somewhere. Let's drink.
Must be a lot of oats in here because this body is perfect. So,
basic Mexican lager. It's good. It's light. It's crisp.
Pretty much all base malt, London yeast.
Well, it's a beer. I'll give it that.
It's
by all, yeah.
I went with Hams, which is a classic American beer.
I mean, break up the word independent into more syllables. Why don't you?
He's a Yinzer, which is great. And most importantly, he's one of 16 Master Cicerones in the world. We do have a live audience here, and it's really great to do this. I personally can't believe you guys paid money to come out and listen to us talk. And with that, I'm going to hit stop. Love that sound. It's Friday somewhere. Let's drink. I am Bearcat, and I am joined once again by my good friend, Mr. Ed Grohl. Edwin, say hello to the boys and girls at home.
Hello to the boys and girls at home. Happy fall October.
Oh, what a beautiful day today was. Really nice.
Yeah, today was almost 80 degrees in central
gorgeous.
Pennsylvania. It's quite a leap from the usual.
It was a perfect day.
Yep,
Ed and
great.
we're joined by a special guest. I'd like to welcome, who is a friend of the show, Mr. John Trogner, who, with this episode, is now our most frequent guest. John.
Wow. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show. You now pass
Joel.
No.
Is it Joel?
Jeff. Cupco.
Cupco. Yeah.
Cupco.
He's going to kill me for that.
So we're going to start this episode like we start them all. What are we drinking? Edwin, what do you have today?
I'm drinking a Tröegs Hop Cyclone. We have a shit ton of it in the fridge, so
nice.
It's very good. As a testament to how good this beer is, Tierney does not normally like IPAs. She likes this.
Nice.
So it looks like it's a crowd pleaser. Her brother brought us a whole bunch the other day. I guess that was his pay case, and he just stops by at noon on a Tuesday and like drops 12 beers off in our fridge. So
nice guy.
Fortunate
nice guy.
for us, yeah. So
yeah.
I just brought two of those. I'm not allowed to touch the Master of Pumpkins. It's in the fridge. Tierney got the Tricker Tröegs pack the other day. So
nice.
Yeah, I was told not to touch that. So
John, what are you having?
We just came out with, well, actually it's not out yet. Now that I say that, we just canned Scratch for 23. So we have another IPA in our series. Trying out a different hop combo. So this will be the first time I've had it. So I figured might as well do it on the show.
Cool. I like the color on that. And it's got a nice fluffy head. It's nice. It's nice.
It's not opaque. You can still see through it, but I consider this hazy personally.
Yeah, that is hazy.
That's like a beer commercial beer that you're holding right there. Look at the perfect head on that. Woo.
Yeah.
Billy, yours looks good too.
Yeah, this one.
Good.
This one's definitely hazy. I went with the Hop Harvest Hop Fest Double IPA, which was super limited. I was glad I got two 4-packs of this. This was it's super good. And this is a big boy. It's 9.2%. Very hazy. And a beautiful color on it. And I love the fluffy white hood. So
I think you drink off of those cutoff, those glasses that I hate just to troll me all the time.
I do.
They do not stack. What is the point?
I don't stack my glasses, so who cares?
Well, all right.
So, John, you're tasting this beer for the first time. Did you hit the mark? How you feel about it?
Well, so Scratch beers in general, we don't necessarily have a mark that we're aiming at.
Sure.
We're trying different techniques, different ingredients. We're just really trying to create different flavors in general. And this one, so actually the three that we just talked about all came from our Scratch lab that we just got up and running, I guess, at the beginning of the year. I say just, it's like COVID took out half the year of our lives. It seems like yesterday, but it really wasn't. And really what that system does is it's 8 small fermenters that we can brew in the medium-sized warehouse or a brew house and separate into little tanks and try different combos. So we did repetitive batches, I think 18 total, all had different hop combos. So trying out different base beers, different yeasts, different temperatures of fermentation, and different hop combos. And then along the way, like each recipe isn't supposed to give you a recipe. It's supposed to teach you a few things, not just one. So you just take really good notes every time you try them. And when we sit down and say, all right, we have 2 weekends back to back in 6 weeks that we want to have 2 double IPAs, one we're going to name, and then next weekend we want a hazy IPA. You can kind of go back through your notes and come up with the favorites that you like. This hop combo was great. This malt was awesome. This, texture was good, but it needs X, Y, and Z. And you kind of just pull all these parts together. So you have, I don't know, dozens and dozens of things to choose from that you can easily build. As long as you can build the recipe in your head or tasted the beer in your head, it's so much easier now for us to build beers like fast. So that's what this was. This was just one of those hop combos that we didn't think we'd ever use. Other than I made a note that it was awesome when we did a small batch. And we actually did this one with Haze Charmer's base beer and this hop combo. And we were like, perfect. It just needs more body. So it needs more alcohol. So we boosted it to 7.5, changed in the process. You change the base malt and then change the whirlpool hop, which gives you, in this case, a lot more juiciness. But we wanted a little, our hoppy beers, we like this, we like soft, but I also like dry. Like I don't like this weird oily texture to it. So yeah. That's just my personal tastes.
I love a dry finish because I feel like a dry beer brings me back to it and then like kind of resets, which is what I want. Yeah. Yeah.
Drinkability. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but it ultimately is like, okay, it's 7.5%, but it tastes like you want another sip.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, you go to the Hopsicillin and that I swear my cans all have holes in them because they empty so fast.
They do go fast, especially at 9%. Like that's a dangerous beer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad I have like 3/4 of a case of it then.
Yeah. Those disappear so fast.
Well, and you were talking about the mouthfeel too, and that's one thing that really hits me over the head with this is how soft it lands on the palate. Sometimes some breweries will make double IPAs, and I don't know if it's water or yeast. It could be a combo of both, but there's a little bit more bitter on the back end. But this is really smooth, and I assume that one is probably super close to that. And that's something that I really enjoy when I drink the big IPAs is a nice soft landing where you're not like kind of going like at the end like it's too bitter or whatnot. Or sharp.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes there's a time and place for that. Like sometimes I like a little hot burn or I like, really high alcohol that heats you up as you drink it. Actually, that's where Hopsicillin came from. I mean, we need to be in the 9s because we need to heat up as we drink this thing. And that's where Hop Harvest came from too, actually. So, the higher alcohol also can bring in texture and body, or at least perception of that. I'm super sensitive to hop burn, so we work really hard. My whole team's sensitive to that, to eliminate hop burn. And sometimes that means you just can't use as much of the hops as you might want for the aroma. But then when you taste it, you're like, okay, that's why we didn't use as much because it balances out well. We're also very sensitive to I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but hop creep. So we want cans that, if they sit on the shelf for a few weeks warm, they're fairly shelf stable. Like they won't re-ferment and blow up. Like I'm just not in the camp that it's okay to send beers out that can explode on you. Even if you put on the label, they might explode. That's not my world. We avoid that at all costs. So like we make sure it's fully fermented out, which means you can't have a super thick, IPA because you add the hops. The hops bring in enzymes. They bring in, ultimately crack the complex sugars and make them simple sugars, and then ferment and blah blah blah. And before you know it, your can's popping open. So,
yeah, we've talked about the issue of like exploding cans on this show for a long time, and I'm right there with you. I think it's a bad consumer experience, and then for a brewer to say, well, the responsibility is on you to make sure it's cared for properly, to not have it re-ferment. Like, come on, guys, that's just not. It's not a good experience. But we're still seeing it. It still happens. People put an Instagram where their ceiling got painted.
I was just about to say that's an Instagram classic, and all it takes is one bad batch, and you got 1,000 Instagram people out there showing their kitchens all purple. It's mostly the fruit beers, I think, that kind of do that, but I'm sure that it can happen to anything almost.
I think there's an interesting problem I kind of want to ask you about. So, like, you said you did like 18 batches, and you're trying all different things: temperature, yeast, different hop combination. You're applying your number of variables has grown exponentially, or what you can create as variables has grown. And one of the problems I've had over the past 2 years is what I call like being able to just track my ideas and my concepts. And like I've started using various different ways to do it. Most of I use a field notes book like thing that is always in my pocket. I've got a journal that I always use, and then I have digital notes. But I've got notes everywhere, and I always like watching like how you make your notations when you're doing hop selection and the like, because you use your nice little Ticonderoga pencil. You got your journal there. And I just kind of like looking at what your notes are, because it's kind of interesting. You get to like peek into your thought process a little bit on like an ingredient. But like I would presume that just like pencil and paper is not going to be sufficient for tracking this level of information, right? So like, how are you tracking all this now? Is it spreadsheets?
I'm not doing it well. I'll start with that.
Okay.
Yeah, because it ballooned. So there's 6 of us on the team, and when this balloons out, so we used to take beers home in a crowler and do a full evaluation, and it was one beer, and then you had to wait 3 more weeks, and you had another one to compare to the last one that you don't have anymore, and so you could do a crowler at a time, and it was easy, but you didn't have the beer right next to you as a reference, so that kind of sucked. So now there's times when I've been posting about it on Instagram when I come home and my kids are doing their homework. I'm doing my homework, and it's just beer homework. So you literally have like 4 crowlers out, and I'm tasting these different crowlers. So I always have a scratch. This is my scratch notebook. I have like 10 of these. I keep it digitally, and I take lots of pictures. So when I usually draw whatever I'm tasting, whether it be hop selection, I'll circle the one I liked, and that'll have the farm number on it, and I might make flavor notes on it, take a picture, so that next year I can pull that picture up and I can reference it back. I also have a hop notebook that I can page up to that hop, and then I also keep it digitally. So in my notes section digitally, I can pull up the hop that I'm working on and get the flavor. Remember the flavor that I said that I had before. But no, it's super complicated. It's actually about ready to get a little more complicated so we have the scratch lab. We're increasing the intensity there. And we just ordered a piece of lab equipment called a GCMS, a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer with an olfactory port. And what this does is you can take a liquid beer, put it in a vial, and it auto samples it and then breaks it down into its chemical components. So all of the aromatic components of that beer, we'll see what those chemical components are, and it'll give us a digital map of what they are with the peaks. So we're hoping that we can take, Scratch 423 with this hop combo and put it into the system, and it'll tell us what these flavor peaks are. Now, the hard part gets to be like, how do you know what the chemical component tastes like and smells like? And I mean, there's so much research that's been done that says what citrus is, that's what grapefruit is, says what burnt rubber is. So we're hoping to kind of give us a fingerprint digitally or analytically that we can then train our brains and our noses and tongues to understand chemically what we're tasting. Even cooler than that, as it's sampling all of that, there's a little port that you put your nose up to, and it says like peak 825 and goes and puffs it into your face, and you smell it. So you'll be able to smell, at least this is what they're telling us. I haven't done it yet.
What the machine smells. You can smell what the machine smells.
Well, with the machine sampling, so when it says it's citronellon or whatever, and it's citrus and it puffs in your nose, you can be like, oh yeah, it smells like grapefruit. Or if it's something that's supposed to smell like burnt rubber, it puffs it in your nose. You're like, yep, that's burnt rubber. So ultimately, we can take all these different parameters that we're working on and hopefully get roadmaps and or just analytical data that we can match up with it.
It sounds like you're buying a Smellavision.
It is. It's just like, well, even cooler than that. You're like putting something into the Smellavision and it's telling you what it's made of. That's so cool.
Yeah. I think that might be a title on this one, Smellavision.
I remember they tried that in the movie theaters where they would pump in smells from the movie. And it died quick, like real quick. But I remember that was a thing for like a hot second, probably 30 years ago. But that's amazing. That's
crazy.
That's crazy technology. I mean, where does that even come from? Like, do you have to get that from some sort of like these people who are making the robot dogs that we see that are taking over the world? Or
well, I mean, if you think about food companies, most food companies are massive. So, and we live in the central, food company, like snack capital of the East Coast, and we have companies like Hershey, and there's all sorts of flavor labs happening all around us. So in all reality, like in those massive companies, this is kind of a normal thing. In a craft beer world, it's so not. There are a few of them out there, but it was hard for us to even get a reference of who's using it. But like people like Deschutes has part of this, and I know New Belgium has one. I don't know if they have the old factory, but I remember years ago when I was at beer school, brewing school, I should say. Out in California, we went to Chico and they had something like this going in Sierra Nevada. And this was probably 20 years ago. And I'm like, I'm going to get one of those one of these days. Like we're going to have one. It's just a matter of time. Cause we're super into how ingredients, put together in certain ways and with certain techniques create taste and create aroma, but it's so subjective that, our team works really hard to understand what we mean when we have flavor descriptors, but we don't have like analytics to go on for the most part, other than the basics like alcohol and IBUs and a couple other things. But this will help us just blow up that whole world. And I don't know. I think it's gonna be a total game changer. Personally, I hope so for how much it was. But yeah.
I want to ask the real question then. I'll tilt to this. I've really liked over the past, year plus how you started to talk about beers as we taste, right? And then you have the Christy does those videos, which I think are just brilliant. They're
she's so awesome, isn't she?
Yeah, she's really good. And but the we taste concept, it's just the right level of suggestiveness to say, look, this is what we're tasting, and then it intrinsically just magically asks the consumer to say, well, this is what I taste. And then how do they reflect? Are they in parallel? Am I tasting something different too? It's engaging. I really love that.
Thank you. I mean, that was the exact intent that we were going for. And it actually came from, a couple different things, but if we step way back, for a long time, beer dinners were huge. So breweries would work with restaurants and you'd come up with a beer dinner, and you'd have to pair your beer with their dish. And, we never knew the chef, and the chef never knew us for the most part. And it was really hard to kind of coordinate. So it's kind of quite frankly, a jumbled mess for a long time. Until one point, it kind of culminated in when we finally had our own chefs, at Tröegs, which we didn't have for 15 years. We thought it would be a great idea to get the restaurant we were working with was, I can't remember which one it was at the time, a really phenomenal restaurant in New York City, together with one of our chefs on a call and just talk through what you should do for this dinner, this beer dinner. And holy shit, did that go wrong? Like, I didn't consider how, the egos of chefs in a room and how that would clash. And not that either of them were intending for that. You could just tell they had different styles, they had different intentions, they had different points of view, and there was no way to bring them together the way that we wanted, because we were talking about beer and they were talking about food, and it came across as we were trying to teach them about food as well. and it was a train wreck. So we stepped back after that. We're like, what did we miss? Like, what can we do how do we build a tool for them? Because they know what they want to make. Like, they're the chef, they're the creative. How do we teach them about our beer easily? So we started with food notes, actually. So we came up with a food note concept where we would taste some ingredients and say, this pairs well, complements it. This, what do we have? Contrasts it. So we complementary, contrasting, just to kind of get them in the ballpark. And then we had an adverse flavor. And ultimately the adverse is what the most important part is, because you can kind of tell them to avoid certain things. Because really, if they wanted to, they can taste the beer and they can come up with what would go well with it. But it's the adverse side. Sometimes if you just give them a hint to what to avoid, that's perfect. So you take that concept and kind of roll with it. We realized that people were really liking that, not just the chefs we were working with. They just liked the kind of exploring those tastes. And then, really from day one, we've always tried to describe what the beer tastes like. And inevitably, you never can understand what someone's tasting it from their own perspective. Like to tell them exactly what pairs with things and exactly how things taste, just doesn't translate fully, and it doesn't get them to engage and doesn't get them to think about it a little bit. So that's where we just transition just a little bit and saying, here's kind of what we're tasting. So we're going to get you on the right path, and we're going to tell you what the ingredients. Sometimes we'll tell you the ingredients that cause those flavors. And some people geek out on that, and some people don't give a shit, and that's totally cool. But eventually you can start to see patterns in ingredients that you like or dislike, and that may or may not help you navigate beers for the future. One of the things we're really always trying to do is when you pick up a can, however it looks and or is described, it should give you an idea of what you're about ready to taste. So there's enough information there if you truly care to get you on the right path. So you might be surprised in a delightful way, but you shouldn't be like completely surprised and be like, whoa, that's nothing like I thought it would taste like. So that's a whole lot about one little question, but yeah, there was a lot there.
That was great.
I've done a couple of those beer dinners here locally when Garlic Poet was still around, and I was always amazed at how well they actually came together with the food and the beer. To me, it was great. Now, my palate's not the most sophisticated thing on the planet, but I was always just amazed where they describe the food and they describe the beer. And in my head, I go, well, that's never going to work. And then you combine the two, and I just go, this is brilliant. This is genius. And it's just, there is a real science to that. And that's really cool that you guys are, doing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, the hard part is always, they always want the beer that's not out yet. And you're planning these things months in advance. Like it doesn't come together in like 2 days. So, we'll say next spring, we have a new beer coming out and here's what it's going to taste like. And they'll come up with the menu. And so they've never had the beer. So they don't get the beer until like the day of the event. So to change everything, it's too late at that point. So like you really kind of like have to aid them in the planning, unless it's like a chef that's so in tune with all your beers, then it's second nature. And you do get that, especially locally. We have a lot of that. There's a lot of chefs that are, have had all of our beers and are very good at incorporating into the menu all the time. But, when you're trying to do a beer dinner in New York or Columbus or up in Massachusetts, I'm just thinking of all the places I've been doing them. It's hard. It's challenging.
Are beer dinners, they're not going on right now. Are they done? Will they come back? Was that a phase?
I think that was 2000s to probably 2010. They're huge. But from 10 on, maybe 15 on, they've really slowed. Because you think about it, about when the tap room started to pop up and brew pubs came back on, let's say, the third wave, there wasn't as much need for them because you could have the beer and food experience in so many different places. It lost its kind of uniqueness. So then I don't know what it's going to transition to. It'll be curious to see what the restaurant world in general looks like.
I did notice a lot more brew pubs that serve food would I guess that's a weird terminology there, but you know what I mean. They would put, here's our menu, and then they'd put pair with this beer, and they kind of gave you the suggestion of how to do that. So I miss the beer dinners. I miss the socialization of it, which we don't know if we're ever going to see that again. But no, I always thought they were cool because then you get the chef come out and tell you about the course and why he selected it and how it goes with it, and you learn a little bit. And I always think, hey, if it was up to me, it'd be 8 bourbon barrel aged stouts with all desserts. Like just all cakes and souffles, and I'd be like, yeah, that'd be my beer dinner. So
well, that would be awesome.
we can. I think we can make this happen. I'm not saying we can't.
Yeah.
Sticking with food, you guys announced, I think today or yesterday. Time's kind of like not a real concept these days. I feel like PA Eats and your collaboration with them. You guys donated a big sack of money to them to help them out with hunger, and your chefs are working with PA Eats in order to, I guess, develop some videos that people are going to be able to be provided with food, and then also provide some skill. Well, like here, make sure I'm getting this right. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Give them some skills to be able to be more confident with their own food security, right?
I mean, that's exactly it. So it's a great organization that works with food banks across Pennsylvania for people that are at risk food-wise.
Yeah.
And they pointed out that sometimes the people getting it didn't necessarily know how to use the ingredients.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, we can help with that. We have some great chefs. And so the video, I think, is going to go up tomorrow. I can't remember the exact timeline. I think our chef Ben did it. He's the one he's done a bunch of videos for us already. He did a little pizza making video for us.
I saw that. That was nice.
Yeah, really, really great at that. So that actually, which is a very cool project, is a small sliver of a much bigger concept of community for us. So story-wise, it's kind of, community was, Chris and I are born and raised in central Pennsylvania, and, constantly trying to figure out how to give back to the town that we born and raised, but also now live and raise a family. And that's on a lot of different levels. When COVID hit, it kind of amplified everything. And we can go into all sorts of COVID stories if we want to, but it amplified, safety first, which was already prevalent within the brewing community. You always have to have safety first, but now it actually meant way more.
Right. So
you have to design everything to be safety first and kind of go from there. It amplified, the need to really concentrate on core things that surge. So when restaurants shut down, seeing 30% of our restaurants shut down was not only devastating. We switched gears quickly to figure out how to help them, how to help either the people that worked for them or help the restaurants that were doing takeout, do it well. So our marketing team, switched gears quickly to come up with materials for them to use on their social media, or beer distributors to use as signs outside, or any kind of tools they could need to help, get their customers engaged. So that helped our partners, let's say, survive because they're selling. But then at the same time, we're like, what can we do for the community that's not just, the beer community, but through beer? So we would do a scratch beer, sell it through our curbside, which was all new for us, and give those proceeds to the hospitality fund that was, giving grants to people that were laid off in the hospitality industry. I think that was one of the first ones we did. And then we did another beer that we donated the proceeds to give gift cards to frontline workers. It was $40,000 in gift cards, $50 gift cards that we gave to as many hospital workers as we could connect to in the central Pennsylvania area. So through Beer for Good, basically. So how do you do, which was Harrisburg Beer Week was the inspiration for that. They would do Beer for Good, beer raises money and do good. We kind of borrowed that concept and, sold beer and gave it back to the community. So one of them was through hospitality, one through the Frontline Workers. We did Black is Beautiful.
Yep.
So and there's more coming on that. So this project wasn't necessarily beer, or the project you mentioned wasn't necessarily beer directly going to those proceeds, but it was still part of that. How do we give to the community and help the community, just in general? It just that one would have happened whether we were in COVID or not. That was already part of the food banks of the area, and food security was already top of mind for us. It actually got delayed a little bit because of COVID, so it was good to be able to get that in before the holidays, let's say.
Yeah. There's one I don't think you mentioned, which is I'm drinking this one now. The Trail Day, which is your dry hop Pilsner.
Yeah. So, this year's a dry hop Pilsner.
That's right.
So that's second.
Yeah, it changes, right?
Yeah. So, it's going to. This is second year in. First year was a hazy pale ale, but because we came out with Haze Charmer, we didn't want the Trail Day to be the same beer, basically, as that. And we did when we did Trail Day. So for those who don't know, a portion of the proceeds go to the Nature Conservancy to preserve land on the Kittatinny Ridge, which I actually live right at the base of it, and hike on it all the time and play on it, but not just for personal use. It's also for migratory birds and for clean water and it's like most of our backyard, so like we thought it was good to keep it as preserved as possible.
Yeah.
So that one will rotate every year. That one actually gets distributed up and down the Kittatinny Ridge, so it's basically from Pittsburgh up through New York. Not a huge amount of beer. I think it's 4,000 or 5,000 cases, something like that.
Well, I bought 2 of them. This is number 2.
Awesome.
I really liked it. I thought it was bold to dry hop a Pilsner a bit, because I feel like a Pilsner is like a style that like is very much not to be kind of fucked with so much. And I was like, ooh, like, all right, let's see what you do with it. I really like this one. I think there was one comment that like really stuck out to me, that they thought that it wasn't like crisp enough, and I kind of like I understand it, but I judge a beer just by like how it makes me feel, not necessarily like, because style is like this is becoming, unless a brewer like states and intends that they're like, I am hitting this style 100%. This is what I want to do. I want to make something that's a measuring stick for within the style. I give a lot of discretion and just go, well, do I like it? Right. And I really like this one. It's really good. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, we have Sunshine Pills, so we wanted to make sure we had a beer that wasn't like that. So we made sure we changed the base malt. We changed water composition. We did use the same yeast, which is hard to get it to taste different. So dry hopping it and using different base malts and different fermentation hops or boiling hops helped pull it far enough away. But that texture, I actually have heard that from other people. And so Keller Pills in general is going to be a little chewier, but the crispness needs to be there for the I hate using the term drinkability, but it really is like the mouthfeel and texture is important for that one.
What I would say is that if you drink this beer and you're like, well, it doesn't have the crispness that I wanted. I always screw up this word. Attenuation isn't far enough for me. I'd go, okay, you're right. That's why Sunshine Pilsner exists. Drink that. This is different.
Yeah, so that's fully attenuated. That's the base malt. Leaves that like slight texture difference.
Yeah, okay.
It's just as attenuated as Sunshine, and the water's a little different. It's a little more rounded flavor wise. I think when we do it again, I would adjust that. We would definitely tackle and make it a little more crisp. I like that base malt a lot. But there's a couple. I mean, with any recipe, we're always constantly saying, I'd like to tweak this and turn that.
Sure.
And Trail Day is constantly going to change. So who knows what's going to be next year?
I think that's interesting because you're telling me it's fully attenuated, but I'm sitting here going, well, it doesn't feel like that because I associate that with crispness. So like, look, I consider myself a layman that kind of pretends to know what I'm talking about sometimes on this stuff. So like, why do I feel that way? And then, and maybe the answer is I don't know why you feel that way, but like, it doesn't.
I mean, it's hard for me to get in your taste buds
Sure.
and fully get that.
Yeah.
And attenuation is just a number ultimately, and there's a lot more that goes into texture.
Okay.
I mean, the bittering hops play a lot to do with that. The bitterness in general, the types of malt can leave different flavors that you're perceiving as sweetness or not sweetness.
Yeah.
Sunshine Pils is Kreuzen now, and Kreuzen more. I think that one was as well, but it creates a more crisp texture by doing that. Acidity can play a big part of it. I have not checked the pH values on either of those. The Sunshine could be slightly lower in pH.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many factors. And what I mean, ultimately, I think that one's going to be water composition.
Okay.
I think we went a little higher on the chloride, which is great, and that makes it a little more rounded.
The last time you were on, we talked about kreuzening, and that at that point was a brand new process for you. You had just started it, and you were really excited about it. I was excited about it too because it seemed like a really cool old world like technique that was being brought to the new world now by you. Mm-hmm. I've never heard of anyone doing this. That doesn't mean that they weren't, just I haven't heard about it. And you've now started to implement it elsewhere. I mean, I get, to me that says you really like it. I know I like the process.
I like the final flavor and final aroma. So ultimately, the process is a pain in the ass. I'll say that. Like the coordination of growing the yeast and getting the extra brew up and going, and actually, having the tanks available, and when you're brewing 24 hours a day, 7 days or 6 days a week, it's a pain. So it's got to be worth it. Like we definitely made sure that it was worth it from our perspective to do it. Because it really does cause upheaval within the brewery. I really think it's an important part for Sunshine. I'm not sure what it would do to Trogner. We have talked about it, but since that beer takes so long in general, but we just did do it in our Dunkle, and I believe the Fest Lager. So it's going to be a continual
the Fest
habit.
Lager
I think.
too.
I can't remember if we did it in the one that's in the variety case. I'd have to look. I'm pretty sure we did.
I really like
the
Fest
Dunkle.
Lager.
Thank you. The Dunkle's not out yet, or is it?
The last Dunkle I had was 420.
Yeah. So in our variety case coming up, we have a Dunkle Lager that will be open fermented and kreuzened.
So the reason why there's a pause is, yeah, so we're going to open ferment it, and then we're going to close it down and pressurize it.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Isn't that weird? Like,
that is real fucking weird. Cool. Yeah.
And shove you into it. Well, if you think about it though, like yeast, you can't tell it what to do. You can give it an environment to live in, and it gives you taste back from that environment. So there's only a few things you can change. You can change temperature, pitching rate, oxygenation. And then after that, you have pressure. So you either have osmotic pressure or you have no pressure. I mean, tank geometry also plays a big part of that. But once you have your tanks, you can't really play around with tank geometry.
Geometry matters.
Yeah, because if you think about, so it's convection. When yeast is consuming the sugar, it's creating alcohol, carbon dioxide, and heat. So heat rises. So depending on how the yeast, how much it sticks together or flocculates, it'll cause this churning within a tank. So if you have a really wide, flat tank, you can have different eddies within it that are operating differently that also aren't the same temperature. So you can have a really inconsistent. But if you have a too narrow of a tank, it can also impede, it can cause stratification. So you need the right ratio to make sure it's enough convection that it's moving I'm making this motion. I don't know if it's actually what it's doing, but like But if you think about it, like as the heat rises, it's rising up and then falling back down.
Yeah.
And the sides of the tank have cooling jackets. So as it's creating heat, you know, you have your temperature sensor that is sensing where that heat is and turning on or off the jackets.
Yeah.
So depending on the width and height of the tank, you can or can't control that. Like our tall tanks are 55 feet tall. So we have multiple sensors going up the sidewall, telling the sidewall jackets at different times to turn on and off, because your top might be hotter than your bottom and so on and so forth. So you're coordinating this convection and making sure it's consistent in temperature as possible.
For the folks that can't see this at home, convection in John's hand motion is sand the floor. So
it's more like paint the fence.
No, or it could be paint the fence.
Paint the fence.
It's not paint the house. It's not paint the house.
This TED Talk rules. I love this. I'm learning so much science.
This is
I
crazy.
just assumed we were videoed. Are we not on video?
Well, we're on video, but
we are.
Folks at home, not so much.
Gotcha.
Oh, man, that's crazy. You know, I understand that brewing's complicated, but every time I talk to you, I just realize just how much more complicated it actually gets.
I think we might overcomplicate it because we're super into control. Because you can, in all reality, like you can take a glass carboy, and a, little pot on the stove, and you can make amazing beer if you pay attention to the details. So like you don't need uber high control or be crazy into the things we're talking about to make awesome beer. We're just doing it like we want to make sure we make it the same every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So like every time we figure out there's a parameter that we should be controlling, we want to make sure we can control it. So,
the last time you and I talked on this show, we talked about right brain, left brain, and you kind of rejected that idea. I'm still there. That like you have a right brain, left brain like battle going on about brewing that you just haven't realized yet. Like the engineer and the artist are still hashing it out along the way. Yeah, they're still hashing it out.
It's art and science, and they're constantly fighting.
Yeah,
totally.
Did you bring how much of this have you brought from? I know you were a home brewer, at one point, and I know you still dabble in it, but I mean, how much of that were you doing? I know some home brewers that are Excel spreadsheets. I have to document everything. I need to know the times everything goes in. I home brew. It's like, we're going to drink whiskey. We're going to drink beer. We're going to miss our hop additions, that kind of thing. I mean,
that's
were you that staunch?
That's how you brew.
Yeah. I mean, but that's why I brew, because I want to go hang out with my buddy and, have fun. But I mean, did you do that when you homebrewed? I mean, like at a small scale, or did that just ramp up when you were like, well, this is serious now?
My home, like quote unquote homebrewing. Well, I'll start by saying I graduated college, moved to Colorado, and got a job at a brewery before I ever brewed a beer. So I worked on the 7-barrel brew house before I was homebrewing. My brother Chris started homebrewing while in college, two years before I moved out. And yes, he was. Well, there weren't the gadgets that you have now, so that literally was an igloo cooler and a pot on a stove. That actually he was doing extract at that time. So he would do extract brewing and a pot on the stove and zero temperature control. So, but he did have a spreadsheet. So yeah, like he was, but the reason he was home brewing wasn't for the social aspect that you were talking about. It was, he and I were going to start a brewery. So he was starting on the path of understanding what ingredients were and understanding how those went together to make something that tasted good. Not coming up with the recipes yet, just the basics of like what's a malt and what's hops and like what happens when they get together with yeast. So I moved out to Colorado, got a job at a brewery, and that brewery was building a packaging brewery almost I think it was 4 months after I started. And they didn't like to pay really for anything, let alone tradesmen. So, and it was pre-Google, like you couldn't Google and find out how to weld. So like, if they needed something welded or some electrical done on equipment, I'd trade it beer, like low fills, with, someone that knew how to weld and someone knew how to do electrical, and they taught me how to do it. That's how I learned electrical. That's how I learned plumbing. That's how I learned how to sweat pipes. That's how I learned welding. not only trading to learn, but also to build that second brewery that they were building. Actually, it wasn't to build it; it was to fix the one that they built because it sucked. They didn't do it right, so I had to. It wasn't just me. There was a team of us that were fixing all the mistakes that the first supplier made. So that's how I really dove into, how do these different parts go together to affect the flavor of the beer. So you have the art side of how the ingredients go together and how, hops and malt and yeast interact. But then you have the science side of you need the engineering, you need the heat transfer, you need to understand convection, you need to understand, how the yeast divides and grows and blah, 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 blah. I could just go on and on. But that's
let's talk about
I don't know where that.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Let's talk about that engineering. So, like your new Nano Scratch, or what do you call that system?
We call it the Scratch Lab.
Scratch Lab. That's right. That's BrewCon.
Yep, BrewCon. Yep.
So when BrewCon, when you call them up and you're like, "Hey, I want to do this thing," how's that conversation go? Like, and what happens?
Well, I will say with that company, we have such a great relationship, and they are so open to anything that conversation goes really well. So I call them up. I'm like, "Hey, I need to replicate our 100-barrel brew house in 3 barrels," and they laugh. I go, "Oh, John, no, that's not what we do. No," and we talk a little while, and they're like, the smallest system we do, and they do small systems. They just don't do it economically, maybe is the best way to put it. Like they build a 3-barrel brew house like we have with more tanks and full automation for a Sam Adams pilot plant up in, I think, Boston. And it's just probably cost a couple $1 million, and that's just not what my
that's not your budget. That's not your
budget is.
Yeah.
So like we're balancing what are the critical components that we need to replicate from our main brew house, and how can we afford this thing at the same time, and talking through what we think the critical component is. You have to have a mash mixer and temperature control of your mash. You have to have an internal calandria to replicate the boiling system that uses the same temperature steam to make sure you're not scorching your wort. You have to make sure you can control the top pressure on your brew kettle, because that controls your boil down percentage. Like there's some key components that you have to have in it. You have to have full temperature control on knockout, and you have to have really good aeration control so you don't over or under aerate your wort on the way to fermentation. It's not complicated stuff. It's just identifying what the critical flavor components are in your main brew house and replicating that on a small system.
And so from first phone call to the first brew, what was that timeline? Do you recall?
Ooh. I mean, almost all projects take about 6 months. Maybe longer. That one might have been longer. Now that I say that, I bet it's
you
not.
must
I bet
not work in government.
Months.
You don't work in government.
Well, I mean, a project I'm working on right now is a minimum of 12 months.
Oh, so what are you working on now?
Not quite ready to go down that path.
Right.
We're doing a packaging expansion. Ultimately, is what it is.
Oh, all right.
So,
when you're ready to talk about it, let me know.
Yeah, I mean, currently we can't bottle and can at the same time. So ultimately, we want to separate the can line and the bottling line and be able to do that at the same time. It's just to do that it takes a lot.
So
that's all it is. It's not that complicated. Really.
This coming from a guy that said cans were great for soup. What's your cans to bottle ratio now?
I have pre-COVID we were 60-40, 60 bottles, 40 cans. Post-COVID or middle of COVID, however you want to describe it, I don't know because I haven't looked, but cans surged radically. But there's a massive can shortage right now. So I don't think we're seeing the full potential of what cans could do. And that's why we're saying, well, I think this is it. I mean, the industry right now, like all beer is 50-50. So if you just look at like macro beer and, craft beer and nano beer, it's 50-50. So we figure we're in this for the long haul. We're going to be here a while. We should be prepping for 50-50. And we're not that now. And our current system can't get us there. So we need to make some changes. But most of it, actually, the project that I'm working on, most of it's from a quality perspective. We want to increase quality in certain areas. That's a lot of it.
I can't believe the death of the bottle is my worst nightmare. I can't even. I'm gonna die 1,000 deaths, man. I know you're kind of on the same page with me as this. I'm just like, oh no.
Yeah, I mean it's 50-50, so 50% bottle, 50% can. So I at least can sleep at night knowing that it's not the death of the bottle. There are some brands that you won't see in a can soon because the can liner disintegrates. So that's a whole nother subject. But
so
I don't know about.
I would be. I like cans. I buy a lot of cans, mostly because I really like pounders. But the Trogner I just popped open, that's a bottle.
Yep.
I buy Trogner bottles.
The majority of that beer is sold in bottles.
Well, when I want a Trogner, generally I'm buying a bottle. I don't know. I just feel like it's just what I grab, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I want a Sunshine Pils, I want a can. So like the style matters very much for me about how I feel about can versus bottle. You ask me to nail down why, it's probably hard. Why not? When are Bombers coming back? Because I miss Bombers. I miss the 22-ounce bottle.
For Tröegs, probably never.
Is it over?
Yeah, and the reason, 750s are here to stay for a kid with a cork in the cage. That's a very special occasion. But Bombers, it's, for us, it's going to be, with the changes we just made, we're not going to be able to run them. So it's the changeover aspect of it, and the weight of it is just, not only that, the retail market doesn't have an appetite for them.
No, there's no space for them.
There's no space. No. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. The Bomber went away, and the 19.2 can took its place. So. 19.2
can. So, like, I saw on Twitter that Guinness Extra Stout was going to start going in this stovepipe can, the 19.2. I'm like, why? That doesn't make any sense. The 19.2 can just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I don't know.
And because you live in central Pennsylvania. But if you lived in a city, it's a convenience package. So so if you think about it, like
it's before I get on the metro.
Yeah, no, exactly.
God,
metro. There's all sorts of reasons from a convenience pack, but it's a grab and go.
Yeah.
And right now, the convenience pack is one of the fastest growing segments, and I think it's COVID driven. For a while, it was the large packs, the 30 packs, the 24 packs.
Yeah.
They were like on fire. And now that's kind of slowed a little bit, and the 12 packs kind of taken over, just 12s in general. But it's the larger package. And then as people are being really careful on how they're shopping and not coming in contact with people as much, convenience becomes a much bigger factor. So when everyone has to get gas. So if you're going to get gas, why don't you walk in and get a beer?
That's right.
And that's your beer for the night. I guess. I don't know.
Speaking of packaging, I loved your summer 15 pack. I thought the branding on it was awesome. And
thank you.
I thought it was perfect. It was like really it was the perfect like branding and size. I liked it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That 15 packs are tough because they're considered like a discount package. So it's really hard to make it make sense with numbers.
I don't know. Like I was going to a party, which
that's
it was
exactly
family.
What it's for.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, this makes sense. I just grabbed it. That was like the perfect grab and go.
That's exactly what it's for. You're supposed to grab it and go to the picnic and be, that's your host gift. Like, hey,
here you go. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, there's something for everyone.
What do you got there?
When are these coming back?
Oh, God, that thing.
2005 Mad Elf signed by John and Chris
nice.
In the, I don't even know what size bottle.
That's a Magnum.
Gallons. It's
a
Magnum.
That's original. Yeah. That's a 3 liter.
I mean, we're going way back with this one. What are we going
to I hand built the machine that we bottle those with. Off of an old conveyor, and that's pretty wild. we couldn't get them last year. So like the manufacturer wasn't manufacturing them. So we, at that point, heard they were going to make them again. But with COVID, who knows? So yeah, if we can get them, we'll make them. Of course, that's the ultimate gift pack right there.
Yeah.
It's even numbered 444 out of 500. I guess it was.
You got to have
the first year.
You got to have a big party for a Magnum.
I have tried to open this bottle numerous times and have been shot down at every. Oh no, we got to wait for something else. I'm like, just have people over and let's just open it. Like we got to do it.
I mean, 2020, like you need to end this year pretty huge somehow. Like, grab some impending.
I'm going to end it by trying to chug that whole thing. That's how we're going to get rid. We lost Eddie Van Halen. I've got no will to live anymore.
The last time I opened a Magnum, it was a Stone Double Bastard Magnum, and I was at a Super Bowl party. And after I had poured everyone a glass, it was still half full. And I was like, well, I'm not letting this go to waste. And everyone had already had it. It wasn't a big enough party. And I finished the Magnum, and that was a bad choice. It was a bad choice. I don't even think they make Double Bastard anymore. I'll tell you what, Stone's one of those breweries that John, I've told you this. There's nothing wrong with Stone. This is not a comment on Stone. But, like, one of the things that's very important to me around, like, this pandemic, and I'm going to take this moment to get on a soapbox, is that there are breweries that are just hanging on. Or there are breweries that are just having a tough run. No one's got it easy right now. And if you're not taking the time to buy from the breweries you really care about and to give them your money, and for me, that has been Tröegs, it has been Funk, it has been Columbia Kettle Works, it has been others that I'm not going to remember that are local here. You know, to go down and to like intentionally give them my money. And I, you know, Ed and I have talked about this. Like I was the guy who would we're having folks over on Sunday. I'll buy some Miller High Life or some Miller Lite. And I just assumed that there was just always enough to go around. That's not true anymore. And you have to buy the beer that you care about. You've got to be intentional about where your purchases go and who you're supporting and who you care about. And if you like the beer you have to go buy it, because otherwise it may not be there for you when you want it later. This is the year that your beer purchases are a vote. It's a choice. This is no longer a morally neutral decision, to buy beer from where you get it.
Yeah, hallelujah. Preach it. So like 2019, I would guess was the hardest year for any brewery out there, unless you were the one that just opened up and got some attention. 2020 accelerated all trends, and whether it be through beer or through anything else, like everything got accelerated, good and bad. And it's not slowing down; it's accelerating. So, and nor do we see any relief in sight. So you are definitely on track, and at least in my world, to every single penny counts, and every single purchase decision is a survival decision or survival point for the brewery that you're purchasing from. Yeah, and not just the brewery; it's brands.
It's brands.
We're going to see a massive change in mix happening, I think, in the next 2 years. And I know Ed's going to be very upset with some of the changes coming up, but I'm not going to go down that path.
Oh, no. He still okay. Bitches about oatmeal stout, John.
I know. It's over my pay grade. Just whatever. I'll just keep beating me to death.
So we by the way, we're all now 2 beers in. John, you just finished your second one. What was that?
2 beers in. So I went through Hopsiclen, which is like hop candy to me.
Yeah. And Ed,
Now
you had that.
I'm going
one,
to take a
right?
break and I'm going to go to Nader.
Ed, you're on mute, so it doesn't work.
Sorry, I'm on my second hop cyclone in the Pete's Winter Brew glass that I got in
Look at that
college.
glass.
I know, this is.
Wow.
I can't believe
That's
it survived this
stackable.
long. Yeah,
Stackable.
Pete's Winter Brew. When's the last time you heard about that?
That would have been what, 89?
This glass, I think I got it in 96, 97. I was in college.
Okay.
So. That was back before they were bought by Coors and all that stuff. And Pete was still like Pete, a guy, like, or whatever.
Wait.
Schlossberg.
Okay, so I didn't understand this. I only knew Pete's Wicked Brew as being part of Coors, and I assumed Peter Coors was Pete's.
No. Pete Schlossberg. Schlossberg? I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
I didn't know this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and I used to buy their summer ale and their wicked ale and all that stuff. That was probably that and the one with the Dalmatian on it, Spanish Peaks, I think it was.
Yeah.
That was another one that we were into in college because we could get it, and we were starting to get into. This is, I'd say, not around 1996, 97. And we just started buying variety cases.
That's
Guy's
crazy.
Brew Zoo out in Altoona, PA. We drive 30
I've
minutes
been
to
there.
go there. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's
Great
we'd
place.
buy. Yeah, and we'd buy all the stuff. And then Spanish Peaks is the ones who were running the original Johnstown Brewing Company. I have one of their glasses in there too.
Yeah,
Again.
that one did not make it.
No, I did get to go to a like in between wedding and wedding reception little middle thing there, and I was like, whatever. But yeah, those were the two first ones. It was Spanish Peaks and Pete's were our first ones, and we were the guys on campus that instead of getting like Yingling Lager was the big one at the time, it started taking off, and we were getting kegs of Sam Adams from Vaughn's in Johnstown, and kegs of Sam Adams back then were only $90.
Wow.
Yep, and Yingling minus deposit was only 42. And it was an old prong tap.
It was
You had to
two
screw
prong
on.
tap,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was before ball taps just took off.
Yeah.
I'm old.
Yeah.
Back in my day.
I'm still trying to get over the fact that I thought the Pete was Peter Coors. That's
No.
crazy. I had no idea. Man, it just shows how little I understand about the history around here.
Sorry, I got us off on a vintage tangent.
No, that's a really good. No, I've learned a lot on this podcast, which is like really why I've ever done this thing. I too am having a Trogner.
Cheers.
So we were doing the show, and I was like, I went into my, in my beer fridge, and I had no Trogner, which rarely happens. It's just kind of like omnipresent, like at least a few bottles of it in there. So I ran out and got a 6-pack of it. I got a 12-pack of it. And this beer is omnipresent in my fridge. I don't drink it. I don't drink it regularly, but I always have to have it here. And I always consider this beer as like kind of like a stake in the ground for you guys. I love this one.
Thank you. And it really is a stake in the ground for us. I mean, that came around in, I think it was in the year 2000. Chris, who was helping me in production and then going out and selling at night, finally needed a vacation. So he jumps on a plane with a friend of ours that can speak German and goes to Germany, U-railing through different cities in Germany, and just experiencing all their cultures and different beers. It wasn't like now when you can go down the road and try 10 different beers. Like you had to physically travel to go try these things. So he comes back from that trip and was like, one of the things that really stood out, well, Pilsner, and that's where Sunshine came from, and Double Bock. So we pushed forward on building this recipe. I think it was 2001, right before Mad Elf. Trogner was born. It was right as we built our new brew house with Braucon. I traveled over and I went over to inspect the brew house. I think I was there for 3 days and I might have slept for 4 hours. So they passed me person to person and then took me to all these places around the whole area. It was an amazing trip. But like with a brew house where you get control, you can take a malty beer at 8% alcohol, but make the mash in a way that creates wort that's fully fermentable. So it has texture, it has body, but it also can be crisp at the same time. So you have the 8% alcohol, you have a ton of malt, but it's not so cloyingly sweet that it kills you. So you get that balance, you get that texture. And Trogner, kind of was born, and it's always been a beer for us that we haven't put a lot of effort behind it, but it's always done really well. Like it's done its own thing, it's found its path, and there's a hardcore group of people that just love Trogner. It's not necessarily their first beer, but it's probably their second or third. It's always in the fridge, just like you described it, and it just continues to grow year after year after year. This year, we kind of looked at it and we like to refresh things every now and then from a branding standpoint. And I'm super excited for the next version of Trogner that'll be out. It probably won't make it out to the world until February, but it's a really cool rendition of what we think Trogner should be and look like. And then with that, we're adjusting the recipe slightly to incorporate Pennsylvania malt. So when we talk about beer recipes, recipe intent, but also incorporate community into it, we were looking for a way to incorporate how can we bring in more Pennsylvania ingredients in a meaningful way, not just in a way that's like for marketing. And I think we did it meaningfully with our field study beer, which has a large component of Pennsylvania barley. We did it with Lolly Hop, which is a double IPA that also used Pennsylvania barley. But those being seasonals, it's really hard for the maltsters to create enough or to make enough of the barley for that season. It's just it's a big peak in their production. So we're kind of looking at it. We're like, how do we do this in a way that's good for them and good for us? So Trogner just seems like the natural pathway to bring in. We're working with Deer Creek Malt. It's the Keystone Pale, so it's one of their main malts. We're adjusting our recipe slightly to bring in Keystone malt, and hopefully first year it'll be 50 to 80,000 pounds of malt, and then every year after that we can keep increasing. So, again, beer for good and beer with intent, but also using beer to change your community. At least to me, I think is important. So, we're going to keep increasing, hopefully, the sales of Trogner, but also the percentage of local malt within Trogner as we go forward. If that makes any sense.
Trogner is what I would call my my add-on case. So like if I do the curbside pickup with you guys and I realize that I'm low on Trogner, it's like, oh, I'll get a case of that or a 12-pack of that. I never go out to get Trogner. I buy it along with whatever beer I went out to find, because it's, I need to get some of that. And
that's interesting.
Yeah, because I've got to have it, right? I got to have it. And I'm not going to make a special trip out for it because I generally always have it. So like it's got to be in my house. There's not another beer that's on that list. This is the one that like, and Trogner's for me. It's in the beer fridge if friends come over, which God knows when next time that will be. They're more than welcome to it, but it's not in there for them. It's in there for me.
Yeah. So for me, it's like if I'm stranded on an island, that's the beer I want. If someone asks what your favorite beer is, that's the one I say. If I want to cook with a beer, that's the one I cook with.
Yeah, I cook with this one too. Yeah.
Yeah. And quite frankly, it has an amazing shelf life. Like you can keep it in your fridge. This Trogner, I think, is 1.5 years old right now.
Wow.
So you can see the foam is not so awesome on it, but flavor wise, it gets more caramely, gets more raisiny, little licorice comes out. But it's still, I actually purposely pulled that one from the back of my fridge to see what it was like. But it's still there. It's still what it should be. I mean, you can taste the oxidation a little bit, but you can't do that with a hoppy beer. Like a hoppy beer, you're like, fuck, what the hell is this shit? But like this is here, and this is old school. Like this is like, you need super solid malt selection. You can't fuck around with your malts. You need amazing mash and brewing techniques. You have to have the right water, and your yeast better be like really freaking spot on. Like it better be strong and ready to ferment and get the job done. So like, you can't mess around with a double box. So like, I think a Pilsner is a really good, if you want to get a good sense of a brewery's subtle techniques, you go for a Pilsner. But if you need to see what they can do with a big beer, double box are a great way to check that out. There's not a lot of breweries doing them either.
No, you guys have won a lot of awards with this one. When was the last time you went to GABF with this one? It's been a little while, I think, right?
I mean, we've been sending this. I think we send it every year in the Bach category, and it's won. I don't know how many medals, eight or so. In recent years, it's not, and I don't know if that's because we're sending it in the Bach and now they consider it a double Bach. I quite frankly don't really pay attention too much, but
yeah. God, it's so good.
Bourbonnator.
Yeah.
I love Bourbonnator.
I just like Trogner and a shot of Wild Turkey. Like that's really all. It's a Mechanicsburg car bomb if you really want to like drop it in and like do it that way.
The Mechanics bomb.
Oh, no, I've got to try that. Because I was actually just sitting here going, well, actually, I'm pretty sure I've done it with Knob Creek.
What do they teach these Cumberland Valley kids? I have no idea what's going on out there.
I
went to Trinity where we learned class and
I don't do Wild Turkey.
Wild Turkey and Trogner.
I don't do Wild Turkey.
Goodness.
That came from, so we always had events down in downtown Harrisburg, and boy, I can't remember the place, but like after you do your event at the nice place, like or McGrath's, Public 202, or like any of those places, you do your beer event. Then we'd go to this dive bar that's not there anymore, and you'd get
Pep Grill.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah,
yep,
I know. We'd go to this dive bar. I'm like, oh, it's a block over. It's a Pep Grill. Yeah.
Well, if you go the other direction, it's
in Harrisburg City. You could get ABC on tap for some reason. It was hilarious. They're like, yeah, we got Mountain Lager. Fuck it. Like, what?
Do you guys still do the ginger beer for McGrath's?
I think so.
Yeah, I think you guys do like one or two kegs, and I think Speakeasy and McGrath's get. That's it.
We only did it for them. Yeah. I mean, Adam's been getting that. He's the one that talked us into it a long time ago. I just can't remember the last time we did it. COVID's messed my memory up quite a bit.
COVID's fucked everything up.
I know they're still selling mules because I still go to Sunday brunch every Sunday, like nice. An idiot. But yeah,
man.
It's good. They need people to do that.
Yeah, of all the places, Speakeasy's really doing okay. People are reserving their tables ahead of time, and it's good to see. I mean, I guess they're at 50% capacity, but they're still kind of at 25% capacity because of the way their seating is.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. They're trying. It pains me to see, and a lot of these bar owners are our friends just from living in Midtown. What we did, but it pains me to see, and I just hope we all come out of the other end of that, But
totally on the same
Bill
page
and I were at Tröegs a couple of weeks ago, picking up some beers, and it looked like you guys were doing everything the right way, and you guys are busy and everything like that. So that was good. It was great to see. Well, as busy as you can be.
We took everything from a safety first approach, and not just safety from our customer standpoint, but safety for our coworkers standpoint. Mm-hmm. And you're not allowed to have bar service, but I actually think if we would have had bar service, it would have been just as safe. But that's not for me to decide. But I don't know if you noticed, we had to change our service style. So you don't walk up to the snack bar anymore.
Yeah,
you have a server come by, and that concept was, we were thinking, how can someone go up and get the order fast enough to not have a lot of contact with people? So staying as quick as possible to get your order and then walk away, because if you have lines, the potential is the people standing in lines next to each other for a long time. It's nonsense, but what do you do? Like, you have to figure out how to give someone a really great experience and not and still be safe. Like that's tough.
I do feel like when we were there, I think that the model that you guys have gone with has adapted well for the type of venue that you are. I think that's, with you got floors, you got a gift shop, you got all this stuff. I think you guys have adapted well and done the best that you can considering the circumstances,
Yeah. I mean, it's not ideal. Obviously, it's not the same energy. It's not the same like excitement when you're there. And of course, you don't have the same camaraderie and community aspect of it. But with today's safety concerns, I don't think that's possible, unfortunately.
Well, Bill and I got to sit at the same side of the table like we were on a date, so it was great.
Nice.
Since March, I've sat in and had a beer inside at some place other than my home at exactly one place. It was yours.
Okay.
And here's why. One, I don't feel the need to be exposing myself to like those kinds of concerns. Given my work, my family life, other things, like it's just like I'm not going to go out right now. But Impending Descent was getting dropped, and I was like, I'm not missing that. I pre-ordered my case. I showed up. Ed was coming down, and we were going to do a podcast that night about it. And I felt comfortable doing it in a way that prior to then I had not, because of a couple reasons. One, I had seen your curbside pickup, and I thought it was well executed. Two, when you had a positive case, the way you had communicated about it had been so clear and concise, and gave me confidence as someone that you communicated to through your channels, that I went, okay, these guys are taking it seriously and they understand the concept of vectors and impact, and that when I was willing to like engage in the next step to come into your facility and have a couple of beers and order some food at the table. Like,
awesome.
I had confidence that had been built in through your other actions.
I mean, that's great to hear. And that's exactly what we were shooting for. I mean, the idea of take the science in and distill what we can do to keep our coworkers and customers safe. Mm-hmm. So really everything is designed around that contact time. So if you're within that distance, that minimum distance, you keep your time to a minimum, you wear a mask, and you just keep it as clean as possible. So every single part of our interaction with our customers is based on that. As simple as that. And for the people that can't do that because they just aren't comfortable with it, or they're not physically able, or we're trying to make our curbside as streamlined as possible.
Yeah,
so
your curbside's super good.
Thank you. It took us a while to get hot food up and running, but we do have hot food now. That has challenges, of course, but I will encourage everyone listening to go, and not to necessarily to Tröegs, but go to your favorite restaurant that's doing curbside and do as much of that as possible. We do it as much as we can. We have a couple places locally. Center Street Grill is right down the road from my house, and shout out to them. They do an amazing job. And just like you said before, like with beer, every purchase matters. I think even more so right now with restaurants, every purchase matters like 10 times as much. Because they don't have the beer release model that some of the breweries have, that they can hype up people to come and grab beer releases. They have specials, and it just doesn't have the same impact. So like the restaurants to keep them going through the winter is going to be super challenging. I think we're hearing up to 70% of the restaurants in our footprint closed down.
Brutal.
I mean, that's devastating. It's brutal. Everything from restaurant owners to chefs to waitresses and waiters and servers in general, and like it's just the whole infrastructure is going to crumble if we don't all
7D as in 7.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's brutal for me to hear. As someone who loves going out and socializing and going to bars and being social, who has nothing I don't have kids or anything better to do, so why not? But that really pains
It's
me.
gonna be a
to hear.
fucking bloodbath.
Yeah, I guess we're not saying it's going to be instant, but I assume a couple months down the road we could just start seeing places being like,
Just depressing.
That's yeah.
And I will say that, I mean, it's going to be regionally specific, and in central Pennsylvania we have a much more insulated effect, which is good. When you go to cities, it gets way more intense. It's because of this, as you're increasing the capacity, that only works if you can also account for the distance. So we tend to have larger places in central Pennsylvania, which is great. They can fit more people in. But in like small little city, blocks, you can't. So while they're allowed to have more people, they physically can't fit them in. So I think the cities are going to be just devastated. And cities are also, I don't want to get into politics by any means, but where we're seeing civil unrest. So like any of those cities that are seeing the riots, like, holy fuck, like they're in deep doo-doo right now.
I mean, and for those businesses that are not instantly wiped out over the next 6 months, the long tail on the economic impact of this, within my work, we're talking about a long tail of like 2 to 3 years before we figure out like how we're going to move out of this. And the long tail is something that's still growing, because the tail is as long as the body is on this thing. Like even if we were to like magically somehow, end this thing right now, the budgetary impacts of this, the long tail that I just talked about, it's going to go for a long time. This doesn't just snap. Okay, we're all back to normal. No. We got to run this thing out. Brutal. It's just so hard. It's so hard. I'm going to drink to that.
Thanks for that uplifting message, Bill.
Yeah.
So to bring some levity back into the situation, you both, and Tierney said this too, I keep saying hop cyclone. Everyone else keeps calling it hopcyclone. Am I an idiot? Or
it's cyclone, right?
It's cyclone? I keep hearing hopcyclone. Yeah.
Wait, what?
Hopcyclone.
It's all one word?
It's tomato. I mean, the can doesn't say it that way, but our trademark does.
Oh, really?
Oh, shit. I'm the asshole. Oh, great.
Because you can't fit if you look at the can.
Yeah.
Your viewers can't see this, but or your listeners, but hopcyclone doesn't fit on the can. Like it would wrap around the whole freaking can. So like, as we're doing this, we're like, shit, we came up with a name that's way too long. It's like, it doesn't, it's like Trogner. It doesn't fit on the can. So like, hopcyclone is.
You know what it would fit on? A bomber bottle. I think that would be the way to go.
Maybe vertically. Yeah, a vertical bomber bottle.
Actually, it's not terrible. You get like that kind of late 90s. This is a modern apartment building, like where the numbers go down the side with neon lights. Kind of cool.
Everything comes around eventually, right?
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, we were on bell bottoms in the 90s.
I want to be respectful of your time. I don't know how long you want to go.
I have all the time in the world.
You want to talk about trends?
Don't tempt him.
That was something we had talked about before we started. Let's do that. What are you doing now?
I'm going to switch gears to this first.
We're good. We're and you know what? I'm going to switch it up right with you.
I'm going to go grab a third beer, so I'll be back.
All right, here we go. All right, this is where we go off the rails, folks. John and I are doing impending descent. Ooh. This is a big boy.
That's just a delicious.
I love this. I love this beer. I was the guy screaming at you when you went bourbon barrel aged only, and this was the perfect year to bring it back as non barrel aged. This is the original apocalyptic stout, and Right call, man. It's super good. Ed's doing it too. Here we go.
Yeah, fuck it.
Oh, nice.
Speaking of supporting local businesses, Tierney just got back from the Midtown Tavern and says hello, John.
Awesome. That is a great place. I highly recommend it. Anyone hitting Harrisburg to go there.
I love Midtown.
It's one of the best neighborhood bars I've ever been.
Hey, look at that head on this bad boy. It's nice and brown and fluffy. I love
you can
it.
Almost put a quarter on that, right? Look at that.
Yeah.
My glass could be cleaner.
So, like, now that you brought it back this year, non-barrel aged, like, you're remembering how much you liked it, right?
I always loved it. So we didn't have Jesus. If we're going to step back a few years, we didn't have enough traffic ultimately to drive being able to do a lot of these things.
Yeah.
So it also took packaging capabilities to adjust. Like we had to put in with cans brought a lot of flexibility because now we can just slap a label on things.
Yeah.
And these labels are much quicker to come to fruition. A bottle label is a pain in the ass. Like a bottle label takes a long time. So like these stickers, like we can get super creative. We can have all sorts of colors and metal metallic and like all sorts of fun stuff from an artistic standpoint, and produce them fairly quick, like 2 weeks, and you can have labels. So, and we're getting better at planning and being better planners, but for a long time we just didn't have that in our wheelhouse. We were just like coming up with beers randomly, and we're like, all right, we need a label tomorrow, and like if you couldn't do it fast, it just wasn't a thing. So getting better at planning and actively looking for creating reasons for people to come to see us was a big part of Impending Descent. And I think this will get a redesign, most likely, to separate it from the bourbon barrel side and give it probably more of a ominous look. I don't know. I'm art directing right now, and I probably shouldn't. But from a beer standpoint, I don't see this beer like not coming back next year. Like I can't live without it. I love this beer. I really miss Oatmeal Stout. Oatmeal Stout's going to be a hard one to necessarily bring back in its original form. This is basically Oatmeal Stout with a little more alcohol, vanilla, and a little more body.
Yeah,
so
that's why it's better. That's why it's better.
I like how John's given me basically nothing to live for. We've been here an hour and a half. I'm like, oh man, the future's bleak.
I think ESB might be making a show down one of these.
Hey!
All right. We're back.
You know we love the classics. ESB, cream ales. You know
they need time because I mean right now. So let me step back. When we were looking at Trogner and wanted to do a redesign, we felt we need to understand our current like place within our customers. So we did a pretty massive deep dive. We did surveys, we did all sorts of questionnaires. We hired a company to go out and like tell us who the Trogner consumer is and tell us what they like about it, what they didn't like about it, what appealed to them, what didn't appeal to them, which is like not the first time we've done that, but like we really did a deep dive on Trogner. And one of the coolest things that we found was, I think what we found was it's always really hard to transition to the next consumer because it's hard to get in their heads and understand what a different generation is going to be buying. But getting into that millennial generation, like we found our biggest competition was not that they weren't drinking malty beers. It's just that we weren't top of mind within their drinking cycle. So, which is like super hard to explain, but they were totally open to a double bock. They just didn't have Trogner top of mind because it's been out for so long. So our job then was to get back up to top of mind because we've been on the shelf so long, they were ignoring it. We weren't new and we weren't what's next. So like, that's where the redesign comes in. We're like reintroducing that whole new group of consumers that love malty beer, that love lagers, that love different styles, that aren't all hopheads. 60% of people aren't drinking IPAs. So the other beer is 60% of the market. which is huge. Which is like, if you don't realize that, like right now, if you're in our bubble, if you're in our like little tiny world of craft beer, you're only hearing IPA, whether it be hazy IPA, milkshake IPA, fruited IPA, sour IPA, blah, blah, all this bullshit. Like you think that's all that exists. But when you really look at beer, it's not what exists. Like there's so much more out there than just IPA. I love IPAs, don't get me wrong. Like all the beers we've come out with recently were IPAs. And I am curious to know, I saw your tweet that said you're watching a brewery transition into a hype.
Did he just mute himself?
Yeah, I don't know. He just muted himself. We just lost his audio. John, we can't hear you. Yeah, I think his headphones died.
Oh, his headphones.
Oh, his headphones died. We're going to keep this. Sorry, John. Holy shit. Look at the size of these headphones. He's about to put on the world's largest headphones.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. They're so big.
Oh, that's like.
Have you ever seen headphones that big?
Yeah, that's like when you buy the Xbox One and go with the.
Yeah. Wow. They're the world's biggest headphones. So, listeners at home, John just put on the world's largest headphones.
He's gonna have to redirect.
Yeah, he's gonna have to
audio.
By the way, we're not editing any of this out. We kept him on so long that his headphones died.
I know. I was wondering about that because he was wearing the earbuds.
Yeah, he's wearing the earbuds. Yeah. Hey, all the credit to him. He was able to like grab a pair of headphones instantaneously and like grab them and turn them on.
Hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah.
Back up set the headphones.
Yeah, your headphones died. But like, hey, all the credit to you. We're not editing this out because that was pretty awesome. Because you immediately
had gold headset with like the Fortnite Ultimate Edition. What the hell's going on?
You like there's like that gold trim on it.
Yeah. And damn it, you sound even better now. You sound better.
Nice.
And like that was fantastic because like you went right to the bench. Anyway,
I mean, I always have like a backup set of headphones. I have another set in my bag if I have to get to it. So I have 3 sets. I have a backup for everything.
So we lost you right where you said some tweet about a hype brewery.
Oh, I thought I saw your tweet that you were talking about a brewery, a classic brewery that was transitioning to an IPA hype brewery.
Yeah. I didn't mean you.
No, I didn't think so because we're not a hype brewery. And
you're not a hype brewery.
We'll never be a hype brewery. But
no,
I don't know, John. I've been to your Splinter releases. I disagree.
I do miss the black, the black and gold Splinter releases.
The RVs with Virginia plates rolling up.
Oh man, I miss those days. The only part about that I don't miss is that parking lot, which was a total shit show.
Shit show. Yeah.
So, but you're not a hype brewery. You're not.
No.
But damn it, if you don't have a lot of releases the last like 10, 15 days, you got a lot of shit that you dropped out. So like, are you going to be dropping a lot of things in the future, or is this it just ended up this way?
No, I mean, that was an active, we pursued it. Think about COVID. So, you get shut down.
Yeah.
And holy fuck, you're shut down and you have no retail, which is a massive part of our existence.
Yeah.
And it employs a lot of people. So as fast as possible, we hit into curbside and wanted to bring back as many people as we could. So, bringing back food was a large component of that to get the kitchen back up and running and get traffic to our general store. The best way to get traffic is to come out with beers.
Yep.
But with curbside, in the beginning, like we literally took kegs from our scratch lab. We had 2 kegs per some of these brands, and did crowlers of it to start getting activity because people weren't leaving their house. Like people were like, "I'm not going anywhere. Like this is fucking crazy. Like we're quarantined." So we had to draw them out. We had to draw them out of their shell somehow. So we started doing Scratch Lab releases. We didn't call it Scratch Lab, but that's what the kegs were. They were from our things that were never supposed to be the light of day. We're like, all right, these are awesome, first of all. So how do we bring people out and get crowlers? So we started with that. We kind of cracked the door a little bit and got people to feel safe coming out of their house to grab beer, and then expanded on that. So eventually it is into what we have now, where we're trying to create a weekly celebration of beer. So like if you want to stay quarantined, you totally can. You can come and get curbside, grab a new beer, grab some food. We have hot food. We have food you can prepare at home. We have really all you could want. Give you a reason to come out and then go back home and go back in your shell. And it's totally cool. We totally get that. And there's a huge, we're obsessed with our customers. I'll start with that. Like totally obsessed with our customers. We have some customers that like don't care what's going on. They might think it's a hoax and they're like, fuck it, I'm going to do whatever I want. That's great. They're easy. You have some customers that are in the middle that are like, I'm only going to come out and do something if I know you're on the same page as us safety wise, and like we're gonna make sure that it's all good. Like, so we have a reason to go out and we're reasonably safe and we're on the same page. That's kind of like the bulk of them. And then we have a group that are like, I'm not fucking go out no matter what. Like, it doesn't matter what you do. So we're like, how do we, like, they need sense of normalcy. Like, they don't want to disconnect completely. Like, what can we do for them? Like, what can we do for the people that are like, and maybe there's a really good reason for that. Maybe it's not just anxiety. Maybe they just physically can't risk it. So that's where curbside comes in. And curbside's like, you can't get any safer than that. Like, you can't. Yeah. You can not be afraid of anything. We won't touch you. We won't sneeze on you. We won't, breathe on you. Like, you just open the back of your car. We'll throw it in your trunk. You have a pickup truck. Throw it in that. Blah blah blah. Like, super super safe. Like, it could be freaking Ebola, and you're not going to get it. Like, we're all good there. So, like, we have something. Again, we're obsessed with our customers. How do we create an experience for them to be as normal as possible in this crazy time that's amplified everything? How do we do that? So that's where the weekly event or beer release comes in. I think we missed 1 week. Week 43 I missed. But I think that's because we tripled up on one of the weeks. So we have, 3 beers last week because it was supposed to be Hop Harvest weekend. And we always have a ton of stuff for that weekend. Mm-hmm. And it only matters to us, but that's what we were like, we're not giving up this celebration of Hop Harvest weekend. So we had 2 or 3 beers. So we'll continue it through the rest of the year. I don't have first quarter schedule yet. I have something for first week and something for the 8th week. We have a hop cycle change happening. First cut's going away and a new beer's going in its place. I'll say that, which is done.
Wait. Wait.
Uh-oh.
So
Bill's triggered.
So first I lose Hop Knife, but I didn't because I got a case of that. So all's forgiven. All's forgiven there. And now, first cut.
Yep.
I get it. There's only a limited number of SKUs you can run, right? I get it.
That's it. The idea of the Hop Cycle series was to be constantly changing it. So
yeah, I get that.
Even though I love the lineup right now, we will force changes every year.
Man.
Or every other year. Maybe that's a better way to say it, because there's 4 of them.
So. Really is perpetual change at Tröegs. Really is.
Perpetual will not change. No. Perpetual will not change.
I was doing a little bit of a pun there, but yeah.
I am playing with perpetual variants right now. I will say that.
When you guys were talking about the beer you have in your house, that's the one we have to keep in our house because all of our friends are perpetual people.
Nice.
So there's always perpetual in our house that they can come. And just even the mini fridge behind me is called the perpetual fridge. Nice. And it has my booze additives and perpetual in it and some Mad Dogs.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's 60% of our sales.
Wow.
I believe that because I know that just by being at Midtown and Speakeasy and Brewhouse Grill every once in a while, I know that that's what people order. Like that's their there are so many people in this general area. That's their Miller Lite. Like that is their go-to beer. And it's unbelievable. It's awesome.
I'm super excited. That's what's driving so much of our growth. It's also like if you look at IRI data, it's the number one IPA, craft IPA, actually number one IPA in Pennsylvania.
That's awesome. You should be super proud of that, and I know you are.
I am. Yeah,
I know you are. You should be. You should be. That's fucking awesome. That doesn't happen. That doesn't just happen. Like that's work.
I think a lot of it has to do with the people in Pennsylvania. Like they're super loyal, and once they grab onto something, they stick with it. And they're incredibly supportive. But they're also like they're more into how things or why things are the way they are. So like they're not just like trendy, floaty, like blah 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 people. Like they really get into how things are made and why what their intent is. I mean, and you said it how many times tonight? And we're like in this little bubble and we're like uber geeks, but like it transfers way further than that, I think. But from our experience, at least.
I'll expand on that a little bit further. I think intent is super important to me. I think about it in my work and in my life. What do I intend? Right? It's a statement that I'm not just being lackadaisical about my life, that I'm not just going with the flow, that I'm a master of like my choices. Like I'm making these decisions with intent, and and it's ownership, and it's also an expression outward of like what I'm trying to do. Like other people should understand it. Intent is incredibly important. And it's not just, it's one thing to be able to like say, well, I do things with intent, but to express it and to tell people, this is what I intended to do. This is what you're doing, is you're opening yourself up to judgment. You're saying, I intended for this to happen. Did it? Right? It's confidence. It's a big part. Intent is a very important concept. It means a lot. It affects a lot of things. And if someone to me came up to me and said, can you just describe Tröegs in as few words as possible? I'd say this is a brewery of intent. They intend to do something. They tell you what they intend to do, and then they expect you to consider their intent. That's as few words as I would need.
I think I'll take it one step further. Like, I like saying what we intend to do, describing what we think we did, getting feedback from people on how they felt we did, and then re-examining our intent through our now new perception through their eyes. And then we readjust. So that continuous improvement aspect is something we really, the OODA loop, exactly. The OODA loop, we really try to implement in all aspects of what we do, not just in beer, but in all aspects.
Yeah.
Through every single corner of the brewery, the OODA loop is a huge part, like understanding how people take things in, make their decisions, and then spit it back out, and then constantly improving, hopefully constantly improving.
Where do you get most of your customer input from? Like, do you guys just, do you go out on Tapped, or you just, Yelp?
I've never been on Tapped.
That's the right answer.
I don't think I've ever been there. Not that I'm against it. I'm totally not against it. Like,
I haven't checked in a beer in.
It's the hoi polloi.
Yeah.
It's the hoi polloi.
That's
not John's words, Bearcat's words.
I'm just saying, like, I just wonder where you gather your customer input from, like your feedback.
It is really, really hard to get a full range of input. So it can be anything from, sending out beers for people to try, hoping they're telling you what they actually think, to like, I have a group of people that I reach out to on a regular basis saying, hey, I want you to try this and tell me what you think. And they do. And some are beer specific and some aren't. But I mean, a lot of it comes through the people that come in the tap room. Like when you say something to our coworkers, like that does get filtered to us, and that really does come up to us and say, not just do they like it or not like it. Like people are pretty specific on their comments. So we do see that. We don't drive on that necessarily, but we take that in consideration. I will say the people that we have in our creative team are by far the most critical people I've ever met. Like, or no one said anything worse about what we've done more than we have to ourselves.
Hypercritical.
We are hyper, like too much so, like way too much so. Like I have to walk some people back from the ledge sometimes. Like, dude, it's really not that bad. Like
That's a good problem to have.
It's awesome. It's perfect. We've cultured that. Like we need to be our worst critic, because if we don't say it, if we're not uber intense about it, like someone else is gonna be. So like we shouldn't be surprised. We should know where we sit, and we should comp to everything out there. I'm not one that follows uber trends, and I don't know who the hot brewery is. So like we're not down that path by any means.
Hot brewery. So it used to be really easy to understand like who was on that hype train. And in all fairness, Ed and I used to like be a couple steps behind the hype train. Dave was always like forefront, like, what's the hotness? What's the new hotness? Like he knew it weeks in advance of anyone else. Before Instagram blew up, he had it. And then I'd just listen to him and be like, yeah, I'm not trading for that bullshit. So like, I don't care. I don't know, Ed, I feel like hype is like cooled off with COVID, right? I mean,
I stopped caring a long time ago. It doesn't matter. I mean, I understand that like hazy IPAs it's divisive. I go to the South and people are like, oh, that's a crazy Northeast thing. We don't care. I'm not going to get to go this year, but they just consider that like some weird encroachment on their beer culture. And they're all just like kind of straight to the vest. It's such a weird regional thing that I can't even understand. And I know we've talked about this before, but
yeah,
man, like when I was getting a steady stream of ale beers, it was costing me $200 and some a month or whatever. And that was like the hype train. It's like, oh, we got this.
The Veil train
Corvette,
was so
it's
expensive.
Blue Corvette. It's this. It's it. And they were good, but like
there's a sameness to it.
And I call it the locusts. Like when you're the hype train, eventually that swarm of locusts is going to move to the next thing, and they did. And then I have not heard of Veil in a year at least at this point. So it's like it's just one of those things. If you try and chase all the trends, but when you blanket the stuff and you're throwing stuff out there that can get to a lot of people in your footprint, and not just, oh, we have to line up for 6 hours to wait for this beer. There's something to be said for that.
One of the things I've noticed about some of these former like hype breweries or hype beers is that they're now here. Like you can go down to Bresky's and you can get Aslan, you can get Lawson's. You can get.
Oh, I was shocked that when I saw. I remember when you had to go to get Lawson's Finest Liquids, you had to go to Vermont
and get lucky,
go to a farmer's market in the regional town near it
on a Tuesday
and see what they might have on a Friday. Yeah,
on a Tuesday,
whatever they had, you got. And you're like, Bases Maple, cool. And then you'd go to like a beer trade, and people would be like, oh, you got to try that. Like you have to, because you'll never see it again.
Yeah.
And then I saw it on tap at like a local bar, and I was like, oh, we've come to this point. Like,
I was at English Brothers 2 weeks ago. They had Lawson's Finest Sunshine and Sip of Sunshine, and it was from June. Like I like picked up and looked at the born on date, and I'm like, and by the way, they had 8 cases on the floor in the cooler. And I'm like, English Brothers in E-Town should not have 8 cases of this, number one. Number two, they should not have 8 cases of this from June. By the way, I'm the asshole that, like, pushes off and like looks at a lower case and is like, oh, they're all from June 21, and puts them back. And like the hype got killed by COVID.
I'm a fan of Lawson's. I'll start with
I love Lawson's.
Oh yeah,
yes,
they have really, really great stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'm also all for checking dates. Like to be as open as with dates as possible. Like that's what a brewery works towards. I mean, every brewery I've ever talked to works for the freshest dates they possibly can get. And you're going to have exceptions everywhere. You have places that rotate really well and places that don't. Like that's definitely our biggest challenge, to work with our distributors who are also trying really, really hard to keep fresh beer, and retailers, because there's so many different brands out there. I'm not sure where to go with that, other than like, wow, it's super challenging set out there. So we've set. I don't know what any other brewery does. I'll start with this statement, but we originally, like when we set our standards with our distributors, from an ordering standpoint, we've heard of breweries requiring 30, 60, 90, and 120 day ordering cycle, meaning you had to order your beer 120 days before you would need it so they could produce it and send it to you, which is a super weird concept to us. So we were like, what can we do? We fulfill our orders to our distributors in 7 days. So we say, in 7 days, we'll get your order, and the beer won't be older than 30 days old, which may or may not mean anything to anyone. But we were like, how fast can we get our orders to our distributor, and how fresh can the beer be? Like as fresh as possible. So we were like, here's our outside guardrails, and our goal is to make everything as physically as on demand, as fresh as possible. Especially the hoppy beers. Like the hoppy beers have to go out fast. Like we've had beers that'll get canned or bottled, and it'll be at like Glenn Miller's in 2 days. Like we've had beers go on the floor where I've gotten complaints that the labels are still wet. Like that's how fast they've gotten to the floor. And of course, that's just the local market. That's just central Pennsylvania. But that truly is like every brewery's goal is to get the beer to the customers fresh and as best shape as possible. It's not just Tröegs. Like it's every craft brewery out there. Like we try to minimize that reach from us to them and make it as short as possible. But it's insanely challenging. So it comes down to your relationship with your distributors, and luckily we have like some amazing relationships locally, and regionally. But that's a whole nother part of the market that no one ever really talks about.
Do you guys like put boots to the ground with your staff and go, okay, well, go to Giant and check out what's going on there and make sure our beer, oh, good.
Yeah. We have people in every market like that. That's what. So they're not only selling but also checking date codes, and they like pull everything they possibly can. Like constantly. You can't catch everything. I will say that. Like
sure. It's a big footprint. You're 12 states.
11 or 12. I don't know if DC is a state yet. I think there's threat of it being a state, but like
depending on the election.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's not that far, but we have people living in every state, and we're loading up the states as well as we can. Like every year that we grow a little bit in each state, we add another person or two. So representation is incredibly important. You gotta have boots on the ground.
Let's talk beer trends a little bit more. Like,
yeah.
So this was something you want to talk about, and so I took some notes. And I'm like, all right, what am I thinking about for? I tried to think like, what have I seen, and let's assume that like somehow COVID like doesn't affect all this. And Ed, you've not heard any of this, so just full disclosure, Ed's going to catch some of this cold, and he might have some other ideas. So one of the first one I thought of was, and this kind of like ties into your concept of the Pennsylvania malt for Trogner, specialty malts. When does when does the concept of specialty malts or barleys like come into the fold? Is this going to be an emerging trend? Because look, everyone's done the hop thing, you know. We've done the Southern Hemisphere malts. We're now doing the experimental malts, where you're just like, it's just some fucking number that's your malt that you're adding to it.
Yeah.
Some like specially number on the malt, on the hop. Okay,
Yep,
yeah, I've been drinking. I've been drinking.
Clearly.
Like, this is single
That's what
hop.
impending descent does to you.
It does. It does. My God.
Bill's vocabulary is on an impending descent.
So you have a hop number 438, and it's a single.
And who
hop.
the fuck knows what that is?
Who know? Yeah. Oh wow! I'm really excited to try that.
Yeah. Woo, that sounds great.
When does specialty malt become like a thing?
That's a great question. I mean, hops have gotten all the hype, and I don't really know.
So
I say hype. Like, if you look at the beer market in general, there's a very small subsegment that's paying attention to those uber finite granular items.
Yeah.
So even hop varieties, there's a very small portion of people that know what a Citra hop is or Cascade hop is. Like, we're in a very small bubble when we get there. If you get to the experimental hops, I don't think the number matters. What it matters is you're saying, I'm making a beer with an experimental hop. All you're saying is that we're experimental, where not only that defines the beer you're doing then, in that it's experimental. So if you need to have that definition, great. If you need to tell your customers that you're on trend and you're experimental and you're cutting edge, fucking awesome. Say you have a number, and that's great. You might need that to get to your customers. But if you've spent time explaining how flavor comes to be, they're already on the train with you. It doesn't matter what the hop variety is. They're willing to understand and take the time to know what flavor's coming in from whatever name you put in front of them. So I think that has to come down to, like you said before, brewers' intent and how they cultivate the relationship with their customer. Malt-wise, like I said before, 60% of people aren't drinking IPAs. So what are they drinking? It's a really a full range of things. That encompasses everything from spices to fruits to malts to light beer. So we have this really wide palette to kind of play with. And then it comes down to, again, how you engage your customer. So if you're intensely obsessed with your customer and communicating with them, you can talk to them about really anything, and your intent comes into play. So malt can be part of that if you want it to be. Overall, though, again, during COVID, things were amplified, and I think locality is a huge part of that, because we care about our community, and most people care about their backyard. So when you start talking about local, and you don't need to know what that means, you just need to know if I drink this beer, if I eat this food, if I shop at this store, I'm supporting my backyard, and it can be as simple as that. So you don't have to know how the flavor necessarily transfers into what you're doing. You just know if you drink a Trogner, there's a good chance, especially in central Pennsylvania, that the barley was grown within 10 to 20 miles of where you live. There's a deep connection to your community then.
Yeah. Ed, any thoughts on that one?
I wonder more about the yeast. I know that we
all yeast is local.
Well, yeah, but we.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, a lot of places are starting to use these yeasts that can turn beers around in 2-3 weeks, and I'm like, is that becoming a thing that we're going to see or no?
Yeah, I think it is.
Of varying styles too, where they're like, oh no, I turned this stout around in 2 weeks, and I'm like, what? And that to me is insane. The science behind it is everything. Do you feel that things are going to a more efficient style with the genetically engineered or scientifically engineered, whatever? I'm probably saying the wrong thing. I've been drinking too, but I mean, are we getting to a point where you're just going to be able to turn beers around in 2 weeks and that's just going to be the standard?
So I'll step back and say nothing is genetically engineered. So we'll put a put in that one and say like, and actually the yeast that I think you're referring to are like as traditional and old school as you could ever imagine. Yeah, this goes. There's two sides of this. Like those yeasts can create really interesting flavors on one side. But they also can provide a faster turnaround on your investment for small breweries. So when we talk about the survival of the COVID times, how do you do that? There's a real appeal to some breweries to turn beers really fast. But if you're a brewer, you're always cognizant that the beer's got to taste good. Like it's got to be great. Like if it's not great, like no one's gonna buy it, or they'll buy it once and not buy it again. And there's very few breweries out there that don't think that way. They're like, well, this beer's got to be awesome. Like if I don't think it's awesome, like I'm not gonna sell it. So like if you take that as the backstop and you say there's a few yeasts out there that you can turn beers really fast that are of really high quality flavor wise, it's going to make sense that there's going to be a large portion of them that are like, yes, I don't have the tank space. I'm going to rush to these beers. I'm going to do a lot of them. They're going to taste awesome. You guys are going to love them. And that's true. It's not going to be a false statement. Like it's going to be a good thing. And that'll be good for them. I think in the short term, there are good variations in flavors from these Kvik yeasts. And if you really know how to coax the flavors out of them, that can be super interesting and different. But there are drawbacks, as with anything. Like there's no silver bullet. So I think we'll see a surge of them for a little while, and then it'll recede back. And as always, traditional beers tend to come back. Like traditional techniques tend to come back because there's a region, there's their tradition. Like they have proven flavors, they have proven techniques, and they tend to have like longer staying power. But I guess anything's possible. But kind of circling back to your original statement, there's definitely no genetically modified yeast that I'm aware of that are like commercially available.
No GMO.
Right
I'm sure I used the wrong terminology there, but
well, yeah, I know what you mean though. It's the Kvik yeast, like Kvik. We're gonna
that's
do one.
what it. That's yeah. I couldn't think of the damn name is the problem, so I just threw words out there to try to sound smart.
There's like 4 or 5 of them we've been playing with, and they'll have really interesting flavors and textures that we're interested in. There's 2 in particular that, one of them we use in our tart and fruit, and one of them will be in the first cut replacement.
So tart, you mentioned tart. So talking about trends, seems to be a trend for like sour everything. But I like that you tend to reference yours as tarts, because I think that's a more accurate representation of what you're doing. It would probably be more accurate to what's being done more broadly, because I think of sours as like a more Belgian kind of like concept.
Yeah.
What you talk about as tart beers is really part of like the sour everything. We're seeing a lot of sours, but they're kettled sours, and I don't like them. Whereas a tart, I think, is properly positioned. That makes sense.
So you have your traditional lambic styles and your sour styles that are, typically cork and cage and take a really long time to brew and very low in acidity. Actually, they're just very subtle and super complex. And I will say, like in the total beer market, if you're not in our craft beer bubble, it's an insanely small part of what's happening beer wise. So while we may see some pop up here and there and get a lot of hype, there's zero volume to it. Like there's literally like almost no volume whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I think they're super interesting. I will say there's a mechanical issue or an engineering issue where if you're below a certain pH, you have so much titratable acidity and a certain alcohol content you will destroy the liner in your cans very quickly. So the breweries that are doing super sour beers, and especially with fructose based fermentations, their can liners are going to be gone like fast. So you're going to find these flakes in the beers pretty quickly. So like there's going to be a coming to Jesus moment where people are like, I can't put these in cans anymore because they're like literally falling apart. And we saw this, and there was a bunch of breweries from out west that had their cans like exploding, like that little like pinhole leaks in them because they were too acidic.
Ooh.
Yeah. So like, and that's a whole nother subject, but it has to do with BPA liners and non-BPA liners and blah 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 blah. Like, not something we necessarily need to go into. But
we're gonna try to treat this maybe a little bit like rapid fire hard seltzer, which is not beer, but it's damn it if it's not brewery related.
Yeah,
it's not beer.
I want to figure out how to do one.
Oh,
well, like come on, like how can you not like it's almost like a bet. Like, dude, like how can you not try something that's like you shouldn't do that? I'm like, well, what do you mean I shouldn't do that?
Well, it's super hard. I will say this: I think it's super hard, as I understand it. Trying to get them real clean, real clear. I think it's very hard.
We'll see. We've done some trials. I think we're on a path that we can pull one off, and we will absolutely. There's no. How do I put this? I will not try. Now that I've gone through the whole statement of cans are good for soup, like there's, and I've been proven wrong. There's no ego-driven recipe formulation from now on. I will try anything as long as I'm comfortable calling it Tröegs centric.
I am here for Tröegs seltzer.
Here's the deal: when you do Tröegs seltzer, come back on the show.
All right.
And we're gonna do it first here. Fair?
All right. Hopefully it doesn't suck. That's totally fair.
Here's the good news. I've only had like 3 seltzers. So like my like what I'm comparing them against is very, very
I am ashamed
small.
to say that my favorite seltzers are the Bud Light ones.
Bud Light, you've had some of those.
Yeah.
Which flavor was your favorite?
They actually taste. I've had mango. I've had lemon lime. I've had strawberry.
God,
I
that
bought
just
a variety.
sounds like ass.
I
just
actually
don't care.
taste like the flavor I think White Claws suck.
I've not liked
Bud
White
Light
Claw.
ones taste like what they're supposed to taste like.
I've not liked White Claw. I've not liked Truly. I've had the ones from. I've had the ones from Levante. I did not like them either. I really did not like them. And I will objectively say, I think they're hard to make. I think they're hard to make well. Because what you have to do is you have to have a bunch of fermentable sugars, and then you have to have them ferment cleanly enough that they don't give you a bunch of off flavors and other things that you want. So I think they're hard.
Yeah, I think the hardest part is actually what you're going to flavor them with. So, like, we have a philosophy that we don't want junk in our beer. So we don't want to just take a glycol-based, unnatural flavoring and add them to a base and call it Tröegs. So, like, we're making it harder on us than we probably need to. And we're saying, how do we make a malt-based clear alcohol, which we did, but then we realized it had gluten in it. So most people that like seltzers don't want gluten. So we figured out a way to crack the gluten. I say crack, just really get rid of the gluten with an enzyme, so we can make gluten-free malt-based like clear beer that you can then flavor with something. But it still has to be called gluten reduced. So, and that was delicious. Like, it was like 9% ABV. I wanted to make it like a double seltzer.
Okay. Now, okay. I'll tell you what, that'd be a market differentiator, because most of them are like 4%, right?
Well, because they're going for under the 100 calories. So you need to get to the 4.5. Well, people, that
I know.
crew
I know.
does care. And I don't blame them for it. Like, people like what they like.
I get that. I do. I get that. But you're talking to the guy who's like, no. I need to have impending descent, which I don't even want to know what kind of like.
I feel like at 9%, we're getting that Gronk sponsorship. We're endorsing Gronk now, and we're going on cruise ships. And
God, I did not.
Oh wait, no, we're not going on cruise ships.
I did not see this conversation going to Tröegs Seltzer. Wow,
it's not. It's going to be so. There's no beer other than smoked beer that I don't want to master.
Smoked beer.
I can't do it. But other than that, like anytime a recipe comes up, I'm like, yeah, we should figure out how to do that. Like there's some recipes we've never figured out. So like we want to just constantly be refining our craft ultimately. Like there should be nothing that we shouldn't try.
How about beer with CBD?
I'm totally for it. I don't know if we can do that right now in Pennsylvania. There's been so many things I've tried. So I'll step back. When I was in Colorado brewer in the 90s, the owner of the brewery wanted me to make a beer with so they outlawed cigarettes. So he was like, how do we make a beer with nicotine in it? So I figured out how to make a beer with nicotine in it. But what I didn't realize was I didn't do the math right. So as we were sampling out to people to try it, it was too much nicotine, and actually, like you could watch the people at the bar that tried it. The first person that tried it turned green and kind of ran to the bathroom, and then like throughout the night, you could see them like hurl, which was super funny.
It's like beer Tamacho. Am I getting that reference right?
It's like watching people
Tamacho?
take a Kodiak for the first time in high school, and they're like,
yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
So I did figure out how to make THC beer at that point. I don't know if I go down that path and describe it, but that was super interesting. It's totally doable.
Super interesting. I agree with.
Hemp and ale. I remember that one.
Yeah.
Good. One last one. This is probably the least interesting in the group. Oat milk. So replacing lactose or cow milk with oat milk. Oat milk is a trend. I'm seeing a little bit of this. It's not flaked oats, not oats, oat milk.
So like using oats in general brings in two things that I'm not real excited about from a flavor stability standpoint and a foam stability standpoint. Oats have tons of oils that come with them, and oil is horrible for foam. Like it just crushes foam. Oil also goes rancid fairly quickly, so your shelf life associated with anything with oats in it is much smaller than you would have with a beer without oats. It also brings in iron, and iron in beers is like the devil. So like if you want to make a beer taste stale very quickly, you bring in iron into the mix. So
Rod and Todd will tell you that iron helps us play.
We've went down the path of like huge oat percentages, thinking we could get body and texture and haze and foam and all this stuff. And from all of our experiments, we've found that the more oats we have, the worse our results are ultimately. So we're definitely not on the oat train by any means.
I love that the more we get you to drink, the more your Pennsylvania accent comes out. You're like, oats. And eat some hoagies. After the Eagles game, more hoagies. Like,
well, I texted that I was gonna like work through the whole stack of beers that I had.
Tell you what, I think you've done pretty good yeoman's work. I feel embarrassed. I actually poured my impending descent into my Hopcyclone, which I'm now calling it, by accident, and had to put it on the shelf because I'm like, I have no idea what the hell that is.
I'm almost ready for my next one.
Oh my God.
So, what's your next one, Master Pumpkin?
I'll have to look, actually. Probably back to a Hopcyclone, actually. I don't have Master Pumpkins in this cooler.
Oh, well, that's okay, because I don't like pumpkin beer, so I don't have that one either.
Well, there you go.
It's just not my thing. I have one. There's just we're at 2 hours and 20 minutes, and look, we this podcast goes long, so we're not afraid of it. But one last.
Don't worry, we're going to cut out my yeast question.
No, hell no. We don't edit it anymore, so it's real easy.
Perfect.
One last piece that I had, hop selection. So
Yeah.
you used to get on a plane and fly out west and go, tromping through farms and pick out hops, and now it's coming to you in a FedEx box, right?
It did. I can see some advantages and some disadvantages to what we did. The advantage of going out really is you get a sense for what's going on in the valley, but more so you get to connect with the farms in general, and you get to hear what they're like thinking about, not just thinking in general, but like what they're worried about. So it's important for us as brewers to take their world into consideration and make sure we contract for consistent planting and harvesting. So like we can't be so judgmental that we'll like switch back and forth between hops like on a whim. They have to plan like 3 years of work to make their world work. So I really think it's on us to make sure we're planning our beers to take that into consideration. So we're not like randomly switching back and forth between all these different things. We're saying to them, not only do we promise to buy whatever Citra hops from you tomorrow, we're going to buy it for the next 5 years or next 6 years. So they can really plan their harvest to be as efficient as possible so they can, sell it and raise a family and have a business and be a part of productive society. Like if we're constantly changing on a whim what we're working towards, like they can't survive. And we've seen that for the last 20, like we've lived through, Jesus, how many hop crashes, at least 3 hop crashes over our existence. And that's not only just devastating to us, it's devastating to them. So you'll have a surge in availability and then they'll rip the plants out and then you don't have any hops. Like it sucks, that ebb and flow. So going out and talking to them and being a part of that helps us buffer that, helps us understand, like you have to talk directly to them to know what their fears are, what they're excited about, and what they're really looking forward to solve. So what problems are they having and how can we help them solve that through the varieties we're working with? Because the varieties, the environment changes. We all know that, plants change, the way they grow changes, like the pressures they have to grow well or not grow well is constantly in flux. So if we don't get a sense for that, we can't help them do well because we want them to do really well. And our recipe formulation revolves around that. So when we hear about a hop variety that they can grow really well, like Sabro, for instance, is one that can grow really well, we're like, all right. When I first smelled Sabro, I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is horrible. Like, why do I want this in my beer ever?
I've got a thought about that one. I've had at least three beers that were single hop on Sabro, and I hated them.
Yeah.
But the beers that I've had it where it's been a complementary hop, it's like, I really like this.
Yeah, totally. So if they harvest it correctly, that's where it came down to. Like if you harvest it wrong, it's cedar. Like it tastes like freaking wood. It's horrible. Yeah. But if you harvest it right and grow it right, it's like tropical with a hint of coconut. Like, so it smells like suntan lotion that you can then use as an accent in beers. That now is one of my favorite accents that we can use. So it's going to be in a lot of beers coming up. And they can grow really well. So like it's a win-win situation. That's a very small example, but like in general, going out there and having that conversation is to me an integral part of that interaction. I also just like that like visceral part of being there. So we did miss that. The other part we missed was, when we go out, I go out on the early trip. We have 2 trips that go out. We go out early harvest and we go out late harvest. I always got early harvest. The reason I like early harvest is those are varieties I like the most. It's also when I get to walk the experimental fields. So walking the experimental fields, you get to see what they're working on and talk to them about when it's a hop that is a number, which no one knows what a number is, but it's only like it's called a single hill. So it's like one row or two rows, and you can smell it, you can experience it, and you can be like, you can be a part of the conversation of like, I can see that in a beer, or I can't see that in a beer. And when you can say, I can see that in a beer, and there's enough of us that say that, they then put it in like 5 acres. And once it gets to 5 acres, that's when our consumers see it as a number. And they were like, oh, it's 42877 or 2892 or whatever the number is, where it's still nonsense, but at least it got to graduate from a single row to a point where you can try it. And then once that happens, you can accelerate its planting to it becomes a name. So I like to be a part of that step. And with our scratch lab, we're going to be a lot more a part of that, I hope. And we missed that this year. So last year we went out, we tried, 24 different hops, and we got to try a couple of those this year. So I'm hoping we get that back for next year.
That's awesome.
The positive side of it is I got to stay at home, and we got to be in our environment to try everything.
Yeah.
So if you're controlled and you can do it on your rhythm, sometimes that's worth a lot.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost that much. I will say that it costs much less to send them out overnight than to fly out there.
A lot cheaper.
But I love, I was just saying the other day, if this COVID shit's still happening, I'm going to freaking rent a U-Haul, or not a U-Haul, but a camper. And I'm going to drive out. I'm going to camp there for 3 weeks, and I'm going to cook myself, and I'm going to go to the farms, and I'm going to do it.
John, you can't get a camper. You can't, there's a couple things you can't get in this world right now. You can't get a bike. You can't get a fishing pole. You can't get a puppy, although I just recently got one, and we named her Barley.
I was going to say, you just got one, yeah.
Yeah, we named her Barley, which I'm super proud of. And you can't get a camper. Everyone wanted campers.
You can't get appliances either.
Can't get appliances.
It took 1 month for my new dishwasher to get here.
You can't get womanized lumber. Can't get pressure treated lumber.
Yeah, I couldn't find any pressure treated lumber.
Yeah, but there's other stuff on this list.
If you do this, I got nothing better to do. I can bring recording equipment and video equipment, and we can make this a documentary. Yeah.
You'll come out? For real?
Hell yeah. If I want to come, I'm in.
Road trip?
I'm the guy you want on that trip.
Can confirm. Can confirm.
I'm thinking, if we can't find a camper, I know a couple houses I could stay at, so we could easily jump in the Suburban, drive out, and self-quarantine. I think there's too much we missed from not going out there that I think it's that important.
This has to, realistically, I think that this country can hold on maybe till March. They're going to have to. I say it because they're going to have to. Next summer, we better have this figured out.
There's somebody waiting to go to the next Coachella. It's he's fucking right. We can't go another year without Lollapalooza.
God, if we're here next fall, Jesus Christ.
Nah, relax. It's not. We'll be fine.
The fear's got to die down eventually, right?
Yeah, we'll be fine.
We're Americans. We're hardcore.
We are hardcore.
Way more than this.
We'll be fine.
NFL's actively screwing the pooch right now.
I don't understand the fear, quite frankly. I'm hoping we can get over this fairly quickly, but I don't want to go down this conversation path.
Nah, there's nothing to be gleaned here. I
am super curious from your perspective, both of you. What do you think the next steps are in general for beer? Where's beer going? Where do you think the highlights are? Where do you think the biggest risks are? And where do you think it's just gonna change and have to fail to go to the next step?
I kind of feel like some of it's going to come full circle for some of the breweries that fought for shelf space instead of doing. I think we'll be okay with we can have people back to our space. We can do to go brewing or to go service with cases, 6-packs, whatever. I just don't know. I don't think that fighting for shelf space at your local grocery store and distro is where people need to be. I think that having attractions to get people to your place, regardless of restrictions or anything, which it seems that you guys are doing very well. I mean, when we were there were people there, and it seems like you're recovering well. I just don't know the people who fought for shelf space and are getting shoved out by the breweries that were bought out by the big conglomerates. I think that was a losing fight, and I don't really know if that's where you want to fight the battles. I could be wrong on that, but it just seems like a losing fight. Now, you guys have a bigger foothold locally and in your region, so but it's the smaller breweries. I just don't think that that's a fight they want to fight. Get people in, buy your beer to go, and if they loosen up, have them in to have a couple beers and sit down, maybe have some food. If you have a food truck, even if that's like your model, or if you have a kitchen, have them sit there, just try to get back to some semblance of normal. That's a rant. I don't know if that even made any sense, but that's where I kind of feel like things are. Bill, Bill, you probably have a more verbose diatribe than I did.
God, I think about this stuff all the time. So, in trends, keep in mind that I am generally more wrong than I am right. So, we'll just put it out there with that when I try to predict. I think that I'm waiting for the West Coast IPA concept, the hoppy, aggressive IPA to make the comeback. We've done this soft, easy hop thing for a while. I'm waiting for it to come back. Not an IBU war like we had, where it's 1,000 IBUs. You'll drink this beer and you'll feel like your face got ripped off. I don't think we're gonna go back to that, but a return back to the properly aggressive hopped, bittered IPA. I'm just sitting there waiting for it to come back. I get out to Philadelphia, under normal times pretty regularly. I don't these days. And I would always make it out to Monks with the specific hope that I would get Blind Pig, right? I wanted that beer. And I'm standing there when I picked up the 12-pack of Trogner today, I was standing there looking all right, what can I get that would some kind of fulfill that need? And I kind of looked at Stone, and I'm okay, these guys over here, they might have that thing, and they didn't. They're it was the Tangerine Express and a bunch of other stuff. I'm fuck guys, I wanted a good proper West Coast IPA, and I'm almost ashamed to say I went and looked is there the Centennial from Founders that would probably help. Oh no, they don't even have that. Damn it, where am I gonna find this thing? And it wasn't there, and I didn't look forever because I'm trying to get the hell out of there, but it didn't stick out. So I'm looking for all these signs around that beer, and so when I got my car, I'm driving out there. I'm man, why can't I find a proper West Coast IPA? Okay, maybe I'm just, and I was at a good beer distributor. I thought a place that I should have been able to find it. I didn't. All right, maybe that comes back. Maybe that's just wishful thinking of Bearcat, and in that case, no one gives a shit what he thinks. He's one person. On the other trends idea. We've talked on this podcast endlessly of some kind of bloodletting. I think so many breweries have worked super hard to hold on. If 70% of restaurants are going to fail, or even 50%, or even 30%, Like, how many kegs is that? Excuse me. That seems super scary. I don't know how that shakes out. I don't buy a lot of beer within a restaurants because I don't go to a lot of restaurants. Got small kids, but when I go out to a restaurant, like I get pretty judgmental about their tap list or their bottle selection. If their tap list isn't good, that's gonna be tough. And then how does that affect with so many places closing? I don't know. Like the trend concept is hard for me to define. The only thing that I focused on a lot over the years as far as trends was the concept of like lagers and traditional styles. And when I like the last like traditional lager case I bought was probably the classic from Victory. I bought that lager and I was like, wow, it's pretty good, but like, it's kind of boring. There's not a lot going on. I should have just bought their Prima Pills. Like I felt like I had made an objective mistake in the purchasing selection there. I understand why they offered that, but like they offered it specifically for the person like me seeking out for it. But I am not going to buy that case again. I'm going to be presented with that question again of like buying something from Victory. I'm going to just buy the Prima Pills because it's awesome. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it kind of gives you some of my thought process around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually, now that I heard Bill's statement, I think we are going to delve into dark days and go back to the ice beer wars of the 90s.
Oh no.
And it's going to be Victory Ice is going to be 6.8%. Tröegs Ice is going to be 6.9%. Well, and that's, I'm going to, pick that up at 2 a.m.
Well,
we're going to delve into the apocalypse.
We can do a callback here. Because, John, you referenced like third wave craft beer, right? Which if we had third wave, COVID is fourth wave. It's either the start of it or it's the transition out of third wave. There's no way that this event is not transitional, right? I mean, we all agree with that. This has
radically changed how we understand beer. There's no doubt about that.
So, the real question is, what's fourth wave?
Or fifth wave. Like we might have skipped a couple waves in there.
we just skipped fourth wave right to fifth.
Holy crap! Yeah. So I'm super curious also where, COVID's. Who knows how long this is going to affect people's psyche? Let's just say it's the next 12 months. So I truly do think like whether it's a thing or not, like our buying patterns are stuck for the next 12 months. Where do you see people buying their craft or getting their craft beer fix? Like how do you see their patterns solidifying over the next 12 months?
God, I wish I knew. I buy cases now.
Yeah.
So like
that's huge. Like how freaking huge is that?
It's
how unbelievably devastating is that to the last 5 years? So 5 years ago, you bought a case, and over the last 5 years, everything changed, and now you're back to buying a case.
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of a larger statement than that.
The mix of six for me, personally, was dead before COVID-19, was replaced by a six-pack, and now, today, every purchase is effectively a case.
A straight case or a mix of case?
No, straight case. Straight case. I would have bought a case of Trogner. I would have bought a case of Trogner, but I was buying it cold so I could drink it tonight. And they only had a 12-pack cold, so I just bought that.
So you're not buying from grocery stores. You're buying from
I buy from distributors. Well, there's distributors that I go to that they take good care of me, so I take care of them.
Yeah.
And you haven't even brought up growlers and crowlers. Bars can sell growlers and crowlers.
I don't do this.
I do know a lot of people in Midtown Harrisburg that are doing that.
Yeah.
If they have the ability, yeah. So that's another big part of it. which most of those are like nobody's buying a crowler of Miller Lite. You know, you're getting a crowler of Perpetual.
The last beer that I didn't buy a full case of that one beer from you was the Hop Harvest, because you'd only sell me two 4-packs.
I know. What bullshit is that? Like I hate limits.
I get it. I would have bought the whole case. I'm showing up there. I'm driving out. It's 45 minutes. It's a 45-minute drive, John. I'd like to have the full case, please.
I agree.
I'm burning
totally
the gas to come out
Sorry.
to you. I'm burning the gas to come out to you. I'd like the full case, please.
Yeah.
I get it. But I get it. I will tell you, if you didn't sell me the full case of Impending Descent, your phone would have rang. It wouldn't have been a text message. It would have been a ring. It would have rang. It would be like, John, I'm going to need some intervention.
In all reality, Impending Descent has to be sold in a case. We should say it's only sold in a case. In all reality, like it's called Impending Descent. Like, how can you not have it in a whole case? Like,
it's going to get me through this winter. It is. I may not have bought enough to get me through, but Jesus Christ, I'm going to use it that way.
At least it'll get through December, right?
Yeah.
So geez, the brewery world is upside down right now. What do you want to see breweries do? Like, how do you want to see them adapt and change, and what needs to be done? Like, what work needs to happen?
I say that depends on the size of the brewery. I think what you guys are doing is the smartest way I've seen it done yet, where they're like, okay, we'll take your name, and they're making sure everyone's distance. And for your brewery size, that is very smart. For smaller breweries, I don't know the faintest goddamn idea. Once they're allowed to, have people inside, do they have food or anything? Like, and if you don't have food, how do you go forth with that? It just adapt with whatever the rules are and go with them. And for a brewery your size, I would say go by the letter of the law more than the spirit of the law, because I've seen bars going willy-nilly. I was in another place that I was like, hey, I have to have food in front of me at all times. And the waitress goes, oh, no, it's a wives' tale. You don't have to do that, and took the plate away. And I'm like, this is not the way it was told to me by the guy who actually writes the liquor.
Write the law.
Yeah. I'm like, okay. Like, but if that's the way you want to run things, I won't tell you what brewery that was. But I just narrowed it down. But it's just so weird. Just, I would say go by the letter of the law, be as safe as you can, and protect your people and your customers, and err on the side of caution. Yeah. And I mean, that's all you can do. And nobody can fault you for that. Nobody can. People can fault you for erring on the other side of non-caution, where you're just like, well, we interpret it this way. And you're like, I don't know if that's the way to go.
I didn't go out a lot to eat before COVID-19. I got small kids. I like to cook. I think that making food at home is important from it's important to me from a family standpoint, because it's a concept of self-reliancy. I like to go out to eat. I like to eat. But
are you saying you're just putting your kids to work during the quarantine?
No, I'm putting myself to work.
Start children.
It was, the family dinner table is just an important concept.
It better be risotto.
Yeah. It's really important.
I agree. Family dinner is a huge part of
it's
family,
so big.
Right?
It's so big. I got 2 kids. We eat dinner together every night of the week. Almost, if not every night of the week. And during COVID, it's every night. And the way that happens is by, making dinner, having it, and the kids being part of that, and how food is made. So I'm not going to go anywhere. I wasn't going to go anywhere anyway. When it comes to the beers I've been buying now and the beers I will, when I say I'm going to buy a case of something, not just talking about, your work, John, but Funk's released their Oktoberfest, which was a Marzen, right? I bought your Fest. I bought a case of it. I would not have bought a case of the anthology necessarily. I mean, that's just not. I don't buy I'm not in the market necessarily for like those mixed cases generally. But when I knew I could go to the brewery and get a full case of bottles of the Fest, I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna get that. Yeah. And Funk's releases their Oktoberfest, which is a traditional Marzen, which they did fairly well. I was pretty happy with that. Like I was like, okay, I'm gonna go buy that. And I bought a case of it. I bought a case of it because I thought it was good, because I had it in years past, and again, it was nice and biscuity and bready and just like super like on point from my perspective. But I wanted to buy a case of it because I just didn't think a lot of other people would. And I want them to continue to make it. And I care about those like traditional styles. And I go down to, Columbia Kettle Works and get crowlers when I can, because I just like those guys and I want to support what they're doing. I like their traditional like German style brewing beers and those things. Like I often feel like I'm not representative of the general craft beer community as a consumer. I feel like I'm like a lot of the industry is just trends have like passed me by, and yet I love and appreciate New England IPAs, all these hazy IPAs, but I'm still sitting there going, yo, when are you going to make a red ale again? Or like, hey, those Scottish ales, remember doing those? Do you remember those? Like that, those were good.
Yeah.
The red ale.
A red ale. Yeah.
You're digging up some fossils.
I'm sorry. Like I just want that again. And the only way I'm going to find those is by, Columbia Kettle Works will do a red ale. They will. Because
and that's where your small local brew pub comes into play.
Yeah.
Where they can have, their crowd pleasers, but they can also have those traditional styles that the brewer's probably in tune with.
Yeah.
That's probably like just loves.
That's a brewer's choice.
He or she puts out, or they put out, a couple barrels of a beer that reflects their brewing like breath, like doing just a couple styles here and there all the time does not make a good brewer. A good brewer is someone that can do a full range of things. So like experimenting with that and having fun with that is, if someone's trying to be like master their craft and being a great brewer, like that's what they're going to do. It just has to be sized accordingly according to the market that's there.
So let's come full circle. You now have this system where you have, you have the ability to get real small, right? So if you wanted to make that Scottish ale,
you could. Yeah. So, and we've been asked that a lot. And I'm going to step back to intent and say, I really like the idea of a kind of a firewall between our scratch lab and beer people drink. Meaning we can get into the pure exploration of technique and ingredients in the scratch lab, and no one will ever try it. So we can truly dig into what can we create through technique and ingredient individually or in complement, but not as an actual recipe. So we can disconnect creativity and final recipe with exploration, if that makes any sense at all.
It makes a lot of sense.
Having to be able to sell a beer really interferes with creativity. So like if you're like, I'm going to make 15 barrels of beer and ultimately this has to be sold over the bar, that fucks up your creativity. Like you can't, you get contained to a world of what you think will work and what you think won't work. So like it really like puts you in a box. So the idea of the Scratch Lab was, how do we get out of that box? Like, how do we disconnect from that?
Yeah.
And how do we get to the pure science of learning? I want to learn every single day something new, and no one will ever taste it but the six of us. But it doesn't matter, because eventually they'll get what we learn in a beer. And that's where Scratch Lab is. Scratch Lab is that pursuit of purity of taste and technique.
That's an amazing statement. We know what sells, but how can we experiment and then figure out what else sells at the same time? Like that's a really good look at it. When you already have like your flagship beers, everything's going, okay, let's figure out some other stuff that might help us along the way, or and don't be afraid to fail, or don't be afraid to make something that didn't really hit too hard. I don't know if you have an example of that, but that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, we learn more from failing than from winning. I'll definitely say that. And that happens more than most. We're like,
That's
what
everywhere.
the hell just happened? Like this combo is ridiculous. Like, what the hell happened there? Yeah.
Who came up with that idea? That guy's fired.
This is probably a whole nother podcast, and so maybe we don't go too deep into this, but there was a long period of time where brewers were educators. Brewers were saying to the consumers, this is what these beers are like. This is how you expand your palate. These are things you should be considering and thinking about and looking for. And therefore, brewers were the Sherpas for the taste. They were the guides. They were carrying the consumers through the process. But now it feels like it's flipped. Brewers don't have the control that they used to. And so that's why some of these styles have started to diminish. Should brewers be able to take the reins again? I would say yes. Will they ever have the opportunity to do so? That might be no. That's something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything's a balance when it comes down to it. So the consumer never had full control, and the brewer never had full control. It's more the perception of who was driving the ship. And it comes down to how you define success. So if success is just making profit, then yes, you're going to pursue the most trendy thing. If success is more than that, if it's, having a company that people can live to their fullest and master their craft and, figure out how to truly connect with the why behind things you do, then I think it can be more than just, brewing to the most trendy thing that sells really well. And then that education component comes into play to some extent. Education can also become preachy. So you have to be careful. Like, you're not like telling people what they should be enjoying.
Yeah.
In all reality, like, they enjoy what they enjoy. So like, it's a give and take. It's a balance. It's constant conversation, and it's understanding where your customers are at today's point. But more so, like, it's just like fishing. The bait you put out attracts the fish that you're going to catch. So a brewery, they're brewing, and the way they talk about their beer and the way they market their beer and the way their intent is driven will attract or not attract their customers. So it's that, chicken or the egg. If you're attracting the right people that's into what you're doing, you can become and maintain dynamic exploration of taste and flavor. If you're, maintaining a style of beer that only attracts people that want to know what's next, like, you have to stay on that train. You have to stay on the train. Like, I have to be trendy. I have to stay at what's new. I have to be on top of this, and that's a whole different world. So it just depends on what train you want to jump on or what track you're on. I think one's a lot harder than the other. One gives instant gratification, and it's all driven by who owns the brewery and what their intent is on return on investment. And that's a whole different subject that I don't know if we have time to get into.
well, ownership, I mean, it's funny you mention it. Ownership seemed to permeate all the conversations around craft beer 12 months ago, a year and a half ago. No one talks about it anymore. Like, it just, we've moved on.
That one got a break during COVID. Like, it got a pass. I hope that comes back up, because I think that's a conversation that needs to be had. But that goes to intent.
The biggest
and to profit, right?
Dogfish got the big pass on that one, and that I'm not going to ask you to comment on that one, because I don't think that's necessarily fair. But Sam Calagione, what he did, I don't know, Ed. We never fully explored that. I feel like maybe some point we will.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even remember what the whole story was at this point.
Well, he's
rallied against the.
It's a merger, but it was not. There's no way that's a merger, in my opinion. I mean, I think I said it at the time. They got bought. I
mean, the guy was doing TV shows like, "Hey, I'm." The
I don't know. You can't say the things he said and then do what he did. It's just.
Oh my God, we're going out to Egypt now. We're gonna dig up this fruit. Make this beer.
He's a nice guy. He's become a character of himself.
I actually, his wife is actually the nicest person.
She's so cool. I did get to meet her. She's very nice.
We're not here to bash any other breweries.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm a Sam fan.
I like Sam.
I am very looking forward to exploring this conversation without me on the call for a lot of different reasons. But I will always be a Sam fan.
I like their brew. I like their beers. I like their brewery. I like their Rehoboth facility, especially the new one. It's gorgeous and beautiful. I like what they do. Their ethos, the way it gets messy once they got into bed with Boston, and
is Jim Cook a bad guy? I don't know.
No, I don't think he's a bad guy.
He just was ahead of the game a little bit. I don't know.
I don't think there's anything negative to say about Jim Cook as far as I don't think that.
No,
at all.
There you go.
It's hard to. My position is it's hard to take the statements that Sam made for years with the veracity that he said them, the consistency that he said them, and for the volume at which he said them, and then apply those same ideas, concepts, and statements to what he did in the acquisition / merger / whatever you call it. It just,
my problem is that over 25 years things are going to change.
I get that.
And to protect your business,
look, an irrational consistency is the hobgoblin of the simple mind. I get that. Yeah, you like that one, Ed?
That was a wild one. I'm not sure I followed that.
Goodness gracious.
An irrational consistency.
Did you write that down in your journal?
No, I didn't come up with that.
Is that a journal callback?
Someone way smarter than me came up with that one. I stole that quote from somewhere else.
You're
an irrational consistency is the hobgoblin of the simple mind.
Yeah.
I
mean, his I don't know if I should get down this path, but I might say it anyways because there's a hopsiclone.
Hopsiclone.
I'm glad we finally got the ruling on the pronunciation.
So when people are so adamant about independence and ownership, it makes me take a second look. We heard a lot from Greg Cook from Stone, and we heard a lot from Sam.
I'm tired of Greg.
Well, the two of them were everywhere for a while. And we were scratching our heads. We're what is going on here? Why are they so adamant about this? And then we figured it out. One sold to a PE, and one sold to a publicly traded company. And there's nothing wrong with that. In all reality, like, if that's what they need to do, then fine, that's what they do. But it does change dynamic from a brewing standpoint, and it changes your intent. Like, it goes back to really what you said. And one of the first things was brewer's intent. So I don't know, who do you support? Like, do you want to get behind the craftsman that's, you know, intentionally brewing something that's flavorful and has the right ingredients for some reason and you can connect with, or is it someone that's like trying to make their mark and publicly trade at a high dollar amount? And that's up to everyone's like point of view.
Greg Stone lost me on the Stone Berlin and the weird things he did with trying to raise money around that, and I was just like, Ed's tapping out because probably his bladder is shot, which is same for me.
That's what I've been doing. I've been going over there and peeing in the corner.
You're outside. I'm stuck here in the cave of my basement. So yeah, folks, if you're listening, if that chirping you're hearing, that's because John's outside.
Right.
We got to wrap this up because I'm wearing out my bladder. 3 hours. God, this has been a good show. I feel like though. Great.
Cool.
The broader issues around craft beer kind of all took a pause while we worried about COVID-19. When those get picked up, I don't know.
I think they're coming screaming back now. Like we're seeing signs of them. So what happens right now is breweries go to their distributors and they share their plans for next year. And as that's happening, like, it's all coming to a head pretty quickly. So people's plans to survive next year, people's plans to do well next year, they're on the board right now. So your additions and subtractions are happening, but also your philosophy in brewing's showing up, and your philosophy in who you're supporting and not you're supporting, and how you're trying to help your restaurant partners back to life, is happening right now, in like the worst possible time that you can imagine. Like, we've not seen this. I've seen multiple crashes happen. I've seen economic crashes happen. I've seen hop shortages happen. I've seen, financial crashes happening, and I've seen like the craft beer bubbles happen like twice so far. So like, this is by far the most critical point that we've seen, and it's all based in restaurants, because restaurants are not able to physically be open. So like what do you do? I will say on a semi-positive note for the whole community, luckily the consumers are all still there. Like, they didn't die off like we were afraid was going to happen. So they're still there.
They still care,
and they care more than ever. Like, I will say there's been an outcrying of support in general for companies they're really tied into. Like, they want to make sure to do well, exactly what we've been saying. So they're asking, where can I go to get it to do well? At least in our case, we have a really good distribution channel, so you're able to find it. In other cases, customers are so in tune with their breweries, they're asking how they can find them and how they can get to them, which is awesome. So they're very in tune with, I want to support my brewery, and how do I do it? And they're asking how to do it, but then they're following through on it over and over and over again. So it's a really good interaction. I think there's a lot of positivity in regards to breweries. I'm very, very concerned with the corner tap bar and corner tap restaurant. I don't think there's enough out there for them right now, and I really want to see more of that. But that's just me. Midtown Tavern, order takeout. Center Street Grill, order takeout.
Midtown Tavern, I know, is one of your biggest accounts from what your sales guys have told me, and I'm like, man,
forever.
I don't know if that's true or not, but
absolutely,
good. And they've been doing the best they can, but they just opened inside seating, and you're like, everyone's treating this differently. They've had outdoor seating, they've had beer to go, they've had cocktails to go. They've done the best that they can, but man, it's just one of those things where you're like, just support your local people. It doesn't matter if a TGI Fridays closes, go down to your local taco place, go down to your local, bar, restaurant, brewery. That's where you need to be spending your money.
Yeah. Take out.
We've done the best we can. I'm like, I can only eat so many wings. Like,
totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're doing as much as we possibly. I love to cook, but we're like, there's multiple nights a week we're gonna go to our local place and get takeout. Because Al's of Hampton is down the road.
I was going to say,
and I order from them
right near
constantly.
Al's. Oh I didn't know if you wanted to name him specifically.
Oh hell yeah! I'm a huge fan of Al's. Yeah, I think it's twice. Well, maybe not twice. Once a week we order from Al's. Yeah, absolutely. I love Al. He's great.
He's such a fun guy too, man. I love going in there and seeing Al. He's like, hey, Ed, he always remembers your name, and
I miss having a beer with him. It's been a long time.
Hopefully when all this is over, we can all just go and have like a little circle meeting and just go, hey, let's all have a beer together. That'd be so great.
I think I'm at the point now where I'm just going to do it. Like, it's just going to happen. I'm at that point.
I've been furloughed since May. If you're thinking of doing it in the next 2 weeks, let me know, because I'd be down to come in.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
We should text Alan and arrange a meetup at his
he'd
place.
be definitely into it. He'd be like, sure, come on in.
Oh yeah.
So so since you switched microphones, are you you're on an outdoor deck? Is that?
So this is like, I have a pool here. You can kind of see. So it's really an like underground bunker.
Gosh, it's
almost.
Like
so my bedroom's above us, and then there's a pool.
Holy Moses. Look at that furniture.
Like,
that is so awesome.
Kind of an outdoor living space.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That is awesome. I love the stonework. It's so cool.
Thank you. Yeah, that's all my wife. She's the designer.
Was this the house that was featured at one point in Penn Live?
Oh God, no! You will never see me in a publication ever.
Oh, was that your brother's place
Chris.
then?
Yeah, that was Chris. He was selling it. Yeah. That's the first time I've ever showed any picture of my house ever.
The good news is I'm glad the building didn't even get to see it, and I'm like, I got to see the porch.
Got to see the whole porch.
Yeah.
We're so intensely private. Like it's incredible. Like there's no exposure of our home life ever.
Your secret is safe with me, Batman. I will edit that. I will even edit the audio.
I can respect that. Privacy is important for a lot of people, me included. By the way, I had to go relieve myself in it. All I could think was, does Joe Rogan wear a diaper? Because that dude goes like 4+ hours, and like
it's amazing. Like, if there's a couple guys out there I would love to have a beer with, and he's definitely one of them.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great
I'd have
question.
gone Bert Kreischer. I'm like, no, I got to have drinks with Bert Kreischer.
Dudes you want to have a beer with? Joe Rogan's definitely on the list. That's a good choice.
He's top of my list. Yeah.
I'm trying to think who else I'd want to have a beer with.
Dave Grohl.
Yeah.
The reason my online persona is Ed Grohl, I used to have long hair that like came down like on the and it came around, and a couple girls called me Ed Grohl when I was out at a bar one night. I think I was at 202 at Logus, and I was like, okay, that's a cool. And I thought they were calling me Egg Roll.
Egg Roll, yeah,
the Chinese food.
Nice.
And they go, no, Ed Grohl, because you look like Dave Grohl. And I go, oh, that's the coolest shit I've ever heard. So I went with that.
Wow.
I can't go back from it.
I'm excited you guys didn't stop the podcast. Like for a little bit there, you were like, I'm done. I'm like, oh shit, like that sucks.
No, we do that every once in a while. We are actually, this is probably literally the longest we've ever gone on a podcast with that.
Oh, yeah,
I'm gonna have to edit a lot of like dead noise out of this.
Actually,
It's gonna take a couple days
I don't think so.
just to manage expectations, but
You're gonna speed it up a little bit so we can contain it.
I'll make it 1.5 so people can listen to it on the subway.
You can put like really fast, yeah, in between stops.
I'm trying to think of like who else I want to have a beer with. I think I'd like to have a beer with President George W. Bush. And here's why. I think Obama would be just less open about the conversation of being president. I don't care what Trump has to say about being president. Jimmy Carter is too far removed from being president, and he's in rough shape. Clinton,
build you a house.
Clinton, I wouldn't trust him to tell me what it was like to be president. But I feel like
I'd love to have a beer.
I feel like Bush would be like, of course, I don't even know if he drinks anymore. I'm pretty sure he went dry. I think Bush would be like,
he's got to be.
He'd tell you. Like I don't think he has the ability to filter out what it's like to be president. I want to have a beer with him.
I think it'd be fun to have Bush and Clinton at the same time.
Oh, that would be a good choice.
For car bombs.
I love
all right, guys.
I love how they're buddies now. They're like,
they are buddies now.
Cool.
It's good,
right? That's what made me think of it.
Yeah.
No, that's
awesome. A good point. Yeah, I want both.
That'd be fun.
Because I don't want to hear what it's like to be president from a partisan standpoint. I want to hear what it's like to be from just like a human standpoint. Like it's got to be weird to be president. It's just seems like a weird thing to do.
Well, I mean,
crazy shit.
look at every president from the day they were inaugurated to the day that they left, and you're like, "Ooh, that's a shitty job."
Can you imagine how awful that would be? Oh my god!
But Obama did have the beer summit with that professor from Yale or Harvard, whatever.
Sure.
That was the thing, and I'm like, all right, he's drinking beer. All right.
Yeah, that was beer. That was beer is like that was a weird use of beer. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever.
It might be more fun to have the VPs, like to grab. And I can't even imagine. I can't remember most of the VPs' names, but like grab the VPs and be like, dude, what was it to like watch all this happen?
And let's get Al Gore in here. Like,
yeah.
I am drinking a beer.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
I think I'd like to talk to a PGA Tour pro, because like in amongst the major leagues, like there's a lot of weird things I think that happen in sports, but I think the PGA, it just feels like there's a lot of downtime. I also think that golfers are like they can be cerebral and weird ways. You know, if I could get the right tour pro, I think I'd like to have a beer with them.
All right.
I think I'd church out the fencing pros or maybe the taekwondo pros. Like,
I like that.
If that's a thing.
The combat sports, people who just get beat up for a living. You're like,
yeah,
I don't know. I had to break this guy's fucking ankle.
That could be fun. Sure.
Like Ken Shamrock. I could actually arrange Steve Blackman.
I've had a beer with Steve Blackman. Done that.
Yeah, I've had a beer with Steve Blackman too.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I could make that happen.
John, you know who Steve Blackman is? Lethal Weapon.
Don't. What?
The Lethal Weapon?
I know Lethal Weapon. I don't know Steve Blackman though.
He's from Anvil.
He was the Lethal Weapon. He was a pro wrestler.
Yeah, he was Attitude Era, like late 90s WWF at the time, pro wrestler. And he's this ripped dude who could just, he could throw you over the moon. And he fell just out of wrestling and then was doing MMA schools and stuff locally.
Nice.
So he's from Anvil. So Harrisburg. I used to run into him at like
Garrison's.
The fucking at Travis Butina's place, the Brick House. I'd run into him and I'm like, oh, Lethal Weapon. And he's like, yeah. And the guy, seriously, I've bumped into the guy and it's like bumping into the side of a stone masonry building. You're
So
like,
not like Lethal Weapon the movie, but like Lethal Weapon the wrestler.
No, not Riggs and Murtaugh. No,
Yeah.
it's not that.
That's awesome.
The dude, and he's just like, and he's with the hottest chick you've ever seen, and he's just like, oh man, and I go, oh hey, I saw you on TV like 16 years ago.
My wife Megan, when we were dating, she took his self-defense class, and she referenced the fact that she's taking this self-defense class, and she's like, yeah, and then he put me into this hold, and I just didn't want it to end. And I'm like, yeah. I get it. Okay.
It's like being caressed by a pound of bricks.
Yeah. She's just like, he's just really firm everywhere. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I'm going to go have another beer, honey. Thanks.
Perfect. That explains a lot, right?
The dude is really hard.
I mean, he's jacked. And he had his own reality show where he was going around being Dog the Bounty Hunter for 20 seconds or whatever.
Nice.
But he's a local dude. He's hilarious.
That'd be awesome.
It's not hilarious. It's deadly, but at the same time.
Yeah.
Steve Martin. I think I'd like to have a beer with him.
Steve, like the comedian?
Yeah.
Too wild and crazy guy.
I just like Steve Martin. I think he's a nice guy.
All right.
Yeah. I don't know. That's my list.
How much of this am I going to have to edit out?
No, we're not any. This is the new and not improved IFS podcast. We don't edit anymore, remember? We just post.
I thought that's how you got started back up. You're like, fuck it, I'm not going to edit anything. Like,
that's
it's
right.
going to be what it is. And if people can hang on, awesome. If they can't hang on, like, I guess we didn't entertain them.
Yeah, the editing was just ended up being too hard, and I just
it's brutal.
Perfection.
It's all about the storytelling, right? Like,
perfection ended up being the enemy of good, and so like it's important to know like why I started podcasting. So like what I really care about is writing, but I don't have the time to do it anymore.
What I really care about is video and audio editing,
which we don't do anymore.
There's the marriage right there.
Yeah, and I liked writing, but I had all these ideas that I wanted to get out or like just put out there, and podcasting was just a faster, easier way to do it. And really, I wanted the reason to hang out with Ed.
And I just wanted a reason to hang out with John Trogner.
There you go. There you go. Like,
is this
like,
the fourth time and third time?
And comment on his masonry. That's all.
4. Number 4.
The first one wasn't recorded though, right?
That was the second one.
Yeah, that was a terrible.
That was the second one.
That forced me into a vortex of I spent $1,000 to buy equipment, and I go, this will never happen again.
Man.
Seriously. And you busted my balls, help me, and I go, help me to that goal.
We like one of the hardest part of this has always been the technical side.
Yeah.
And once we figured that out, by the way, we ran out of time to do this thing. So like now when we do this, it almost becomes plug and play, but we don't do it enough anymore. Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, this is a conversation that I don't know if it's interesting to people or not, but like it's not that hard. So, getting into beer and getting into like what makes the cogs turn, I think is fascinating. But
there is one part of this conversation thus far. It's kind of like still eating at me. I think you have maybe you don't have. I've not heard a sufficient response to the concept of like how you're tracking your variables and your outputs for your system. Like,
I can cut this out if something goes too silent.
Like how you're going to, because the number of variables you have for your nano system has like gone exponential.
Yeah.
Like your record keeping.
You just have to be super intense. Like in all reality, like intensively good notes constantly being taken. And there's a lot of stuff that gets missed. Like there's so much that we're like, fuck, we should have written that down.
That's going to start to eat at you. You're going to need a system.
It's constantly.
You're going to need a system.
And we're working on that. Like we are working on a lot of data collection systems, but in all reality, like it gets so complicated so quick. It can get it's really just needs to be as simple as like 2 stars means it's okay, 3 stars means it's really good, and 4 stars means it's awesome. And keep it as simple as possible, because when you page back through the pages, and if you keep the right written notes, you can see them. And that's how I did these last 4 beers. Like we not just me, I say me, but like there's a team of us that were like, all right, let's look through our notes and like let's page back through, and we toss out like, here's my 3 stars, here's my 4 stars, and like these were what we noted as really good. From there, we can take that concept and we can grow them, and it actually becomes super simple. Not a formula per se, but like once you have that basics down, it's not hard to build on.
Your team that's developing your taste is what, 6 people?
I say 6. What do we have? Ben, Andrew, Tim, Sean, me, Joel, Justin, and Chris. So we actually have 8 people. But then we have, that's just like the basics. And then from there, like we get input from everywhere. Like it's not just, it's like almost never ending from that point.
But, you know, what does the minority opinion mean in that group? So when like, like, you know, you want to build around consensus, I'm sure, but there's got to always be these outliers, right? Like
there's definitely not consensus. I'll start with that. Like,
okay,
we don't do by like who votes for the best one. Like that's that's nonsense. In all reality, it's, can we identify, did we hit our mark, and what other flavors or aromas came into effect as we're shooting for that mark. And all of us have a wide enough range of perceptions that like it's really hard to get a consensus. So it's important not to do by consensus, because if you do that, you dilute the intent of the beer and you dilute the intensity of what you can come up with.
Okay.
If that makes any sense at all.
Then how do you establish winners?
That's a really hard thing to do, but there's no simple way to describe it other than like when you come up with a real winner, it's obvious. Like you taste the real winners, and we individually taste them, and then we come back as a group and we talk about them. We talk about them intensely, but not just like I like this and not like this. We talk about every single corner of the beer. Everything good, everything not good, but not in the sense of good and not good, but like, what did you taste? Describe everything from malts to hops to yeast to water to like everything in between. And eventually you come to like, we never ask people, did you like it or not? But it comes through in that, did we hit our mark or not? And if we hit our mark, then it's good. If we didn't hit our mark, then it's not good. But inevitably along the way, it's pretty freaking obvious. Like when we hit it, like Hopsicle, we're like, fuck, this is awesome. Like we are spot on here. And there's been beers that we're like, it's not quite there. It's never going to get a name. Like it's just a thing that happened and we'll never see it again.
So in which direction are you working? Are you finding a spot that you want to fill in your lineup and then working towards that? Or are you just building like concepts and ideas and working out and then moving, and then you realize, okay, I've got something. Now I need to fit it in.
We need to find time for both. Like, because if you only work towards a final goal, you miss the serendipity response of finding a combination. So we have goals we're working towards on one side, and we have shit we're playing with. And that usually what happens is the stuff we're playing with creates the hops clones. Like, and that's where that came from. We were like, here's a bunch of stuff we're working on. We're going to figure it out. We're going to find Haze Charmer. And as we find Haze Charmer and Lucky Holler, we came across Hopsiclone. Like, that's ultimately what happened. We're like, we drove towards those two beers, and both are doing incredibly well, but we found Hopsiclone along the way. And we actually found like 6 more beers along the way as well. They're just not out yet. So like you if you do the combinations right, you can find all sorts of different things as long as you can differentiate them. If they're all the same, then you found nothing. If they're different just enough, then you found a lot.
So if you got 6 that like you just said, are you running? We've talked about the limited number of SKUs, right? So like, what you can put into the market broadly, that's finite.
Yep.
What you can do as far as a brewery releases
is infinite.
Infinite. Are you just comfortable with like saying, okay, I understand what my SKU number is, and then I'm just willing to play here at the brewery?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to be. So you can like, there's 2 different strategies. One is like, if you do more than 1 a week, like locally release wise, it gets confusing. So we can do 52 releases a year. So as we come up with these different beers, we're gonna like, all right, we can do 52 of them. Like if you do more than that, like I don't even know if we can do 52, just because like you can't sell that much beer. Into the distribution world, it's maybe 3, 2, 3, if you're lucky, 4. So you have to be incredibly careful what you send out into the world, just because when you send one out, you take away from something else. So either you subtract one, take it out of the market and replace it and hope it does better, or you're knowingly putting something into the world that's going to take away from something you already have out there, which is painful. So yeah, it's a tough indulgence.
What I see on your Instagram all the time is, Scratch XXX coming out. And I think people understand that the Scratch is a Hershey thing. You want to Scratch, come to Hershey. But if you start adding names to things, and they're like, the first question is, will this be in Cincinnati? Will I be able to get this in Ithaca? Will I be able to get this in? It's like, and your responses are nice. They're like, unfortunately, no, we'd love to have you come visit us. It's a welcoming message back, right? But it's leaving a consumer going, oh.
Yeah, you disappoint them then. So most names, Hop Harvest Ale is the exception, but when we name a beer, we like to get it to the markets.
Yeah.
It's really kind of as simple as that. If it has a number, it's in-house. If it has a name, it should go to markets.
Right.
Every once in a while, Impending Descent, Hop Harvest Ale, those are the confusing beers where we name them, but they don't see the world because you just physically can't get them out there.
Impending Darkness. That's
that'd be a good one.
But to that point, that
well, Impending Darkness came last year, right? Sorry,
Perpetual Darkness.
Perpetual Darkness. Shit.
Yeah.
But to that point, it's, hey, you need to come here to get this beer, and I still say that that's kind of where everything's gonna maybe go to. You got to go to a brewery to get the beers, and I don't think I don't think that's the model for every brewery, but like a Sealands Grove or whomever, you have to come here and get it. But I don't know. You have to come here to get some of our beers, and I think that's a great model.
Yeah, I mean, for the majority of the breweries out there, I think that will be the differentiator, where you either go to the brewery to get it, or you don't go to the brewery to get it. Like that's the difference. With 10,000 breweries out there, like there's going to be a lot of different ways to reach them. Yeah, so you go to the tap room, you go to the brew pub, you try it somewhere else. Like there's a lot of different variations out there right now.
Picking it back on it, Perpetual Darkness. I'm not breaking any news. You already put that on your Instagram. That's coming. Perpetual Darkness. Yep. Is that gonna hit distribution, or is that just in?
No. It's just not like the distribution world, especially right now in COVID time, is insanely challenging to get things through. Like, there might be a couple of people here and there that are willing to deal with it, but for the most part, they're like, no, I want the big movers, and that's it.
Perpetual Darkness is the thing that keeps me from telling you that you need to bring back Flying Mouflon. So,
what about the Perpetual Haze?
Perpetual Haze. What's Perpetual Haze?
That's a perpetual variant that we're working on, but
perpetual
will just be in house. But yeah.
Okay, so John's drunk enough to start talking about things that may be coming. You mentioned to me that variants are coming out Perpetual. As soon as you mentioned it, I'm like, damn, it's a long time coming. Damn straight, you need to leverage that. It's a good brand. Leveraging it is smart, right? Perpetual Haze sounds smart to me.
Well, it won't see the market, but like ideas like that are always on the table. So
why not? It should be a playground.
Yeah, that's the whole idea, is to take what works, you take what's not working, you learn from it, and you kind of go from there.
Yeah. Look, you got a lot of interesting things coming down the pipeline. I can't wait to see what you're going to do. Can't wait to see how they're going to play out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Man, we're 3.5 hours.
I can't believe Ed's still awake.
Hey.
I have to work in the morning. God. You at the brewery tomorrow, John?
I have a virtual job interview tomorrow.
I have 8 o'clock with a can supplier. So, yeah.
That's important, given that there's a shortage.
Can filler manufacturer. We're working on a can line expansion, so I'm going to talk about what our options are from a can filler standpoint.
Can you?
And then we actually have. Go ahead.
I was going to say, can you please wear that headset when you do that?
I will.
Thank you.
Yeah. This. What I like about this is it blocks out all other noises, so I can't hear what's going on around me.
It's good.
It blocks out everything but the crickets.
You can hear the crickets right now?
Yes,
the crickets come in nice.
It was, once you went to that one, I was like, ooh, he lives.
There's the crickets.
Yeah.
That sucks.
I was kind of like, is he sitting in his fireplace? Whenever you had your other headset on, and then you put on this headset, I'm like, oh no, he's outside.
Outside.
I was like, I might fall asleep now.
Yeah.
Hey, puts you in the trance. Yeah.
Well, I switched back up to Hop Harvest. This is my last one.
Nice. How do you like that?
I like it a lot. Here's the biggest
problem. Hopsiclone and Hop Harvest. What do your taste buds gravitate towards?
Hop
Two
Harvest.
Completely different.
Hop Harvest.
For real?
Yeah.
Wow.
I go with Hopsiclone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love it so much. I drank. This is my third one.
It's close, but man, I really like this one. This one's got some kind of velvetyness that I think the Hopsiclone didn't quite have.
Yeah, that's the lemon drop hops. It's like this deep, rich juiciness.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Hopsiclone's more like mixed citrus and pops, super bright. Passion fruit.
I bought a case of Hopsiclone. I would have bought a case of your Hop Harvest. That's the biggest problem with it. You limited me to 2 4-packs, of which I had to share. it. That's the problem. I'm that guy who's like, I show up with beer in my neighborhood, and people are like, hey, you help me out. I'm like, yeah, of course I can help you out. Pricks, go for a drive yourself sometimes. I was passing out Impending Descent like it was going out of style. Here's the thing. The Impending Descent, I was super glad to have that back. No one's happier than me. Did you drink the 83 I dropped off for you?
I'm not. I forgot to bring it home with me. I was going to crack it tonight, and I totally spaced it. I have a few actually in my. I have a pretty extensive cellar. I'm super excited. Next show, that's what we'll do.
Next show, okay, fair enough.
Craft this up.
I'm kind of curious how you think it stood up. I thought it stood up very well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's a long time though to stand up. I will say that
it is a long time.
Yeah.
The last time I just had the 3-year anniversary for me moving into this house. When I moved into this house, I cracked open a Splinter Gold.
Nice.
Yeah. I still have one of those left. I would like you to do a big Splinter again.
I would love to. That has been super challenging.
What was the last one you did? Brown?
Yeah, we have a Splinter Brown batch in the tanks that I need to taste to make sure it's still okay. It was awesome right before COVID, and then shit hit the fan, and kind of lost track of a lot of that stuff.
I'd love a big format Splinter again.
Me too. I'm totally on board. We have Grand Cru packaging hopefully next week.
Wow. It's Mad Elf season, right?
Oh hell yeah, Mad Elf. Actually, most of the Mad Elf has already been packaged.
Damn.
So, we're shipping it now. It'll hit the market. I think Monday. And I have never seen so much excitement for Mad Elf than we have right now. There's been this awesome attention given to classic brands that people are comfortable with and super aware of, and Trogner's on fire, Perpetual on fire, and Mad Elf. We've never seen people clamoring for as much as it has been right now. And even Nugget Nectar. Nugget Nectar is not even in the not even the planning, and they're like, "Oh, we need Nugget." So it's awesome. It's you can't dream for more than that.
So the Grand Cru, love it. All right, I'm excited to see that come back. Would really like to see it a Splinter Blue, Splinter Black revisited.
Yeah,
Splinter Blue.
Those are challenging, I will say. In today's world, there's a certain quantity you have to do to make it work through the system, and those have been hard to get to happen, unfortunately.
Does the nano system make it more possible?
No, because in those beers, if you're going to package them, they have to be a certain stability wise. You can only put them through certain systems. We don't have the ability to take a nano system and package them in a cork and cage.
Yeah.
So we have a scaling issue when it comes to that. So if it's 30 barrels of beer, we can pull off anything. If it's below 30, we have a really hard time. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. Is we have so many different beers in barrels, and oak aging, fruit aging, blah 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 blah. It's just not the market doesn't have a palate for them right now. We can't sell enough in house to make it work, and the market has zero need for them out in trade. So I'm
gonna be. What I want is I want to come in and I want to buy a $30 bottle from you, John. That's what I want. I do.
All right.
Dead serious.
You can do that.
I want to buy a $30 bottle from you. Grand Cru.
I want to make a bottle that is deemable for.
Yeah.
We were okay, we're comfortable charging this.
Yeah.
That's a
bottle limit 2. I wrestle my brother-in-law to come along with me. That way I can get 4. I want Emil. I want a $30 bottle. That would really intrigue me.
There's a goal right there.
Price points on beer, I think, are always interesting to me. I'm very sensitive to it, not from a what I'm willing to spend, but like what I think it means concept. And a $30 bottle is an interesting number to me.
Yeah, that's a high dollar amount.
Yeah, but it's not outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it in regards to wine, you're right, it's totally not outrageous. I just would want to make sure that we're providing the value of $30 that's value and not hype.
Well, because a $30 750 barrel, 750 milliliter. What I'm going to do with that bottle is I'm going to share it with my father. I'm going to sit down with him. I'm going to pour it with him. I'm going to have time to talk with my dad. And we're going to spend time together around it. And so the question is, would you spend $30 to spend time with your dad? Yeah. Would I spend $30 to spend an hour and a half to 2 hours with my father? Yes. I do it every day and twice on Sunday. That's how I think of that.
There you go. That's how you do it.
I got nothing else. Ed, how are you?
It almost looks like you're in a straitjacket. What the?
He's like stretched out. He's against the wall.
I don't know. It looks like you took down your curtains and just decided to swaddle yourself.
Well, I untucked my shirt. I untucked my shirt and I just didn't give a shit.
Oh, all right, yeah, okay. Yeah. No, I got nothing else. I
drained the well.
I feel I have no more jokes. I feel like we've exhausted all of our time with John as a friend and for the rest of our lives at this point.
I really have to thank you.
Mitt.
I really have to thank you. We did not intend for this to be this long form.
Oh.
No worries.
I have to edit all this, so
I can edit this.
I hate all of your
We're
guts.
posting. We're posting.
It would be great if you post it this long and see how many people actually make it to the end.
I'll tell you what. I will do the. Okay, so let's do the release the Snyder cut of this, and I will release the raw version of this.
Oh,
and
just
I will chop one down to like, let's say 2 hours.
No, we're gonna just release this as is.
Okay. All right, let's just do it.
Well, the fact of the matter is, we've never done this show for the clicks. We did it because we thought it was important.
No,
we wanted to do it. We wanted to do it.
No, we just wanted free beer.
Yeah, that too. I like the free beer.
I always did it for the love of just broadcasting. I don't know.
Well, I care about podcasts,
and I did it for the love of video editing too. I love doing that.
So. John, thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
You've done yeoman's effort to be here with us today, and
I mean, drinking beer and talking on a headset, so it's that's not so bad.
And Bill, this just is so much fun for me. I love it. Thank you so much.
Next time I want to see you pick up that guitar and actually play it.
Which one? I have it.
Oh, he has one like right there.
I have an acoustic right here.
Oh, well, now all of our listeners.
There we go.
The listeners who hung out for 3+ hours, they're nearly 4 hours. They're out now.
Now they're checking out.
They're in the serenade. They're like, all right, we're done.
All right, I'm out of here.
So one of my goals during COVID was to put together an acoustic power hour for people that I could just piece together on YouTube, and I haven't been able to do it. Everyone else can make like this giant concert, and I'm like, I cannot figure out how to do it. So, but thank you for noticing my guitars.
Yeah, that and the asteroid game in the background.
Yes.
It was like, what
This
was
is
that?
this is my office that I put together to make sure that Tierney would not get terrified of me. Where I'm
Nice.
Where's their sliced turkey?
All right,
I love
boys.
you guys to death. I'm just
Thank you, boys. Hey,
Thanks.
so much.
this is where I'm gonna hit stop.
All right.
All right,
I love you.
great.
I love you both. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See y'all later.